Introduction: the thermodynamic iceberg and the illusion of free will. The arrogance of the human intellect is the greatest thermodynamic tragedy of our species. You look in the mirror, formulate a colossal financial goal with your frontal lobe, and convince yourself, with pathetic biological ingenuity, that you are in absolute command of your carbon vehicle. You believe your daily decisions, your willpower, and your analytical thinking are the engines directing your destiny in the three-dimensional matrix. That is the illusion of free will. It is a neurological mirage designed so the ego does not go mad, realizing it is nothing more than a fragile passenger strapped to a blind beast. Let's bring this fantasy down to the cold numbers of neurobiology and data processing capacity. Your conscious mind, the seat of your logic and willpower, processes information at a maximum speed of 40 bits per second. It is a slow, exhausting processor that consumes obscene amounts of metabolic energy, ATP, to stay focused. In contrast, your subconscious mind processes more than 40 million bits per second. It is not a new age, mystical cloud, nor a simple trunk of childhood memories. It is a thermonuclear reactor submerged in the depths of your nervous system. It operates in absolute darkness, dictating your electromagnetic signature and 95% of your behaviors. It dictates your behaviors through pure gravitational inertia. Visualize a massive iceberg. Your conscious mind is only the 200 Hz tip of ice poking above the surface, battered by the wind of circumstances. The subconscious is the mountain of millions of tons of black ice submerged in the abyss of the ocean, dragged by lethal thermal currents. If the tip of the iceberg decides it wants to sail north toward wealth, but the underground mass is programmed by fear to pull south toward scarcity, which way do you think the structure will move? Mathematical physics does not forgive. The greater mass always subdues the lesser. The inertial slave tries to change his life using exclusively 5% of his capacity. He tries to win a war of attrition against an engine that is 1,000,000 times more powerful. He exhausts himself fighting against his own instincts because the conscious will fatigues, but the subconscious, automated at a cellular level, never sleeps or tires. This book is the electromagnetic guillotine for soft self-help. We are not here to ask the mind for favors or to visualize magic. We are here to descend to the engine room. You are going to learn to hack the autopilot of your nervous system, subjecting that destructive force to the tyranny of your frontal lobe. When you manage to align 95% of your thermodynamic mass with your ambition, linear effort will die. Success will collapse in your favor, not by luck, but by pure and overwhelming gravitational superiority. Welcome to the darkness of your own code. Chapter 1: The Autonomous Machinery, Neurobiology of the Underground Engine. For decades, the industry of fast consumption mysticism and soft self-help has committed an unpardonable intellectual crime against you. They have taught you to visualize the subconscious mind as if it were some kind of magical genie trapped in an ethereal lamp, a benevolent spiritual entity waiting to grant your desires. They have told you to speak to your subconscious with tenderness, to ask the cosmos for permission, and to trust the process. We are going to exterminate that 200 Hz narrative right now. Your subconscious mind is not a magical genie. It is not a spiritual entity. And it definitely has no benevolent intentions toward you. Your subconscious is flesh, blood, electricity, and pure chemistry. It is a dense neurological structure, a blind and implacable thermodynamic engine embedded in the moist tissue of your skull. It is a massive data processing beast that operates under the relentless laws of conservation physics and metabolic efficiency. In this chapter, we are going to drag the subconscious down from the mystical heavens and smash it onto the laboratory operating table. We will dissect the carbon hardware that makes up this underground engine: the basal ganglia, the brainstem, and the autonomic nervous system. You will learn why your conscious attempts to succeed fail so miserably and predictably. You will discover the terrifying truth that you inhabit a biological vehicle governed by an autopilot that does not reason, has no sense of humor, and does not question the morality of its orders. It is time to turn on the turbines. 1. The dismantling of mysticism, anatomy of the blind engine. To claim the throne of the first cause in your timeline, you must first understand which parts of your mammalian brain are conspiring in the shadows to keep you in mediocrity. The conscious mind, that small and fragile frontal lobe you are so proud of, is barely a recent evolutionary addition. It is a thin layer of paint on a tank. The real power, the traction engine that pulls your carbon body through the 3D matrix, resides in the subcortical structures. The brainstem, the base survival engine. At the base of your skull lies the most primitive structure of your neurology. It doesn't know what money is. It only cares about keeping the vehicle breathing. When you face a financial risk that threatens your comfort zone, this primitive structure can hijack your physiology. It injects terror into your bloodstream because it interprets the loss of a client as a direct threat to your physical survival. The basal ganglia, the automation hard drive. Located at the base of the forebrain, these are the epicenter of automation. They are the engineers of inertia. Every time you repeat a thought or action, the prefrontal cortex spends a lot of metabolic energy, ATP. Since the brain is designed to save energy, it automates the pattern. Once a pattern installs there, it becomes an autonomous habit. If you have spent 20 years feeling fear of success, that pattern is not a bad attitude. It is a physical, dense, and heavily myelinated groove in your basal ganglia. It is hardened hardware. The amygdala, the thermal radar. This is the alarm siren. It scans the environment 40 million times faster than your logical intellect. The amygdala stores the emotional memory of every friction or failure you have experienced. It does not remember logical details, but it remembers the thermal and chemical signature of pain. When you join these structures, you get the autonomous machinery. This underground engine processes approximately 40 million bits of information per second, scanning your environment and adjusting your electromagnetic field. Meanwhile, your conscious mind, the you that decides to work hard, processes a pathetic 40 bits per second. The thermodynamic disparity is grotesque. Trying to change your life using only 5% of your conscious capacity, while 95% of your neuronal mass is programmed for scarcity, is like trying to stop a 10,000-ton freight train by pressing your bare hands against the locomotive. The architect of the now instead reprograms the autopilot. 2. The nuclear submarine, the sovereignty of the autopilot. To understand the psychopathic coldness with which your subconscious mind operates, you must burn the ultimate mechanical metaphor into your frontal lobe, the nuclear submarine. Visualize a Typhoon-class ballistic submarine, a beast of steel submerged 500 meters deep. It has a fusion reactor and a cybernetic autopilot. In this analogy, you, your conscious mind, are the captain of the submarine. You sit in the command tower. Your subconscious mind is the immense engine room, the nuclear reactor, and the tactical autopilot computer connected directly to the engines and the diving rudders. The inertial slave is frustrated because he sits in the captain's chair, looks north toward wealth, and shouts, "I want to go north. I'm a winner." But to his thermal despair, the immense steel submarine continues to turn slowly south, heading straight toward an abyss of debt, depression, and mediocrity. Why does the submarine ignore the captain? Because the captain is using the wrong language. He is trying to pilot a thermonuclear beast using motivational shouts and hollow affirmations. The autopilot computer, the basal ganglia, is housed in the pressure hull. It is deaf to the emotional cries of the surface. The autopilot computer only obeys a binary, dense, and repetitive code programmed over decades. And here lies the most terrifying characteristic. The autopilot has no moral compass. The computer does not reason. It has no sense of humor. It has no empathy. It does not know the difference between success and failure. If in the past, due to trauma or a 200 Hz environment, the coordinates crash this ship against the reef of financial failure were entered, the computer will not reflect. It will not say, "Captain, are you sure?" Never. The underground engine is a blind executor. It will take that destructive order and execute the crash perfectly. If your life is chaos, it is not bad luck. It is because your autonomous machinery is executing its code to perfection. It is doing exactly what it was programmed to do. The machine works flawlessly. The problem is that the code you gave it is a self-destruction virus. The architect goes to the engine room to type new code. 3. The absence of humor and the literal execution of code. The most destructive syntax error is believing you can joke with your biology. In your daily life, social interaction depends on sarcasm and irony. The conscious ego laughs when you make a mistake and say, "I'm a disaster. I'll never make this work. I was born to be poor." Your frontal lobe knows you are joking to ease tension. But neurobiology is different. The subconscious processes information inorganically and literally. It has no prefrontal cortex to interpret irony. When those words leave your mouth with an emotional charge, the central nervous system registers the direct command, "We are a disaster. Target, born to be poor." In milliseconds, the underground engine adjusts your physiology. It contracts the geometry of your cardiac electromagnetic field and suppresses the release of dopamine. It releases a subtle drip of cortisol to keep you in a state of doubt. The next day, you feel like you have lead in your veins. You think you are tired. False. Your autonomous motor is simply executing the order you gave it yesterday with your joke. It cut the energy to the turbines because you informed it that your structural identity was that of a failure. The quantum universe and your biological hardware lack a sense of humor. Every word is a line of C++ code in your destiny. For this reason, the architect of the now imposes absolute acoustic tyranny over his mouth. He never pronounces a sentence of self-pity. If he makes a tactical error, he does not say, "I'm an idiot." He says, "The previous system showed a vulnerability. I am compiling the security patch. My statistical inevitability is intact." Speak to your biology like a general speaks to a firing squad, with direct orders, exempt from doubt, free of irony, and with the gravitational density of a neutron star. 4. Thermodynamic efficiency. Why the brain automates chaos. If the subconscious is so powerful, why does it seem determined to keep us trapped in pain? To answer this, we must look at the economy of ATP, the energy currency of cells. Your brain is 2% of your mass, but consumes 20% of your metabolic energy. Conscious analytical thought is thermodynamically expensive. It burns glucose and ATP at a rate that primitive biology considers dangerous. The main law of survival is the conservation of energy. To prevent the brain from exhausting the body's reserves, the autonomous machinery has a primary directive: automate everything possible into an unconscious habit. When an action is automated, its electrical consumption falls to nearly zero. It becomes the path of least neuronal resistance. Here, biology betrays you if you don't supervise it. The underground motor doesn't classify habits as good or bad. It only classifies them as known, low ATP, or unknown, high ATP. If you grew up in a 200 Hz environment where worrying about money was the base state, your brain has wired those networks into 8-lane highways. To be miserable costs you no energy. It happens on autopilot. When you decide to change your life, you are forcing the system to clear a jungle with a dull machete. Your subconscious, operating like a stingy accountant, panics at the energy expenditure. To stop the thermal hemorrhage, it activates fierce resistance. It sends signals of extreme fatigue or depression. It bombards you with thoughts of doubt. This is too hard. We should go back to bed. It is just trying to save electricity. The architect of the now knows this fatigue isn't real. It's a biological bluff. It is a software illusion. He applies sustained thrust. He forces the system to burn ATP, forcing the basal ganglia to wire a new highway. He knows that after 66 days, the new titanium identity will automate. Greatness will then cost zero energy. 5. The collective unconscious, the machinery's ecosystem. We do not inhabit isolated closed systems. Your underground engine is constantly interacting with the underground engines of those around you. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious, but we will call it the 200 Hz static cloud. Most people operate with engines programmed by fear and cheap consumption. This colossal mass of brains emits a low-quality electromagnetic frequency. It is an invisible network of background noise that saturates the social environment. Your autonomic nervous system is an antenna that is always on. If you connect to news or social media, your engine absorbs this collective static in the background. Slowly, like a computer virus, the collective fear infiltrates your code. You start to doubt the viability of your empire. You feel a heavy fatigue. Your nuclear submarine has been hacked by the local network. The solitary king operates in what computer security calls air gapping, the physical isolation of the network. To prevent infection, the architect cuts the electromagnetic connection with the herd. He retreats to his anechoic chamber. He applies a tyrannical information diet. By isolating the autonomous machinery, the engine is purged of injected fears. Your antenna becomes a transmitter of absolute density, free from interference. 6. Military protocols for hacking the engine room. Neurobiological theory is useless if you don't put your hands on the reactor valves. To become the admiral of the quantum fleet, you must implement immediate physical interruption mechanisms. Here are 3 military protocols to take command of the underground motor in the 3D matrix. Protocol 1. The linguistic firewall, the frontal veto. Your subconscious is a passive and literal listener. You must censor acoustic trash. Action: declare martial law over your speech apparatus. You are strictly forbidden from using the verb to be, joined to a temporary condition of weakness. Never say, "I am poor." Execution: if you experience a logistical failure, code it as an external event. The current system lacks liquidity. By isolating your central identity, the I am, from the temporary problem, you prevent the autonomous machinery from assuming defeat as its new operating system. You protect the reactor core from verbal leaks. Protocol 2. Density saturation, code overwrite. The subconscious is not reprogrammed with delicate logic, but with the force needed to drive a titanium bolt into concrete. Repetitive impact. Action: establish ballistic saturation of your environment. Execution: identify the exact command your autopilot must execute. Record audios with your own voice in a military tone and play them on loop while training to muscle failure and right before sleep. Paper your peripheral vision with the code of your empire. Force the blind engine to swallow the new information through the sheer brute force of volume until the new neuronal pathways myelinate. Protocol 3. Biomechanical inertia brake, the pattern interrupt. When the autonomous machinery tries to return you to a 200 Hz habit, you must apply an emergency hardware brake. Action: execute the pattern interrupt via thermal or kinetic shock. Execution: do not reason with yourself. The reptile brain ignores reason. Stand up instantly, give yourself a physical slap on the leg, or get under a stream of ice-cold water for 30 seconds. This mechanical shock pulls the brain out of its autonomous trance, stops the automated route, and returns electrical power to your prefrontal cortex, giving you the window you need to redirect your laser. Chapter 2. Frequency descent piercing the beta wave blockade. A pathetic scene repeats every morning in the bathrooms of millions of creators and dreamers across the planet. The inertial slave stands up, looks at his reflection, clinches his jaw, and begins to shout affirmations. I am a money magnet. I am successful. My business invoices millions. While he shouts this, his chest is tight with the anxiety of bills he must pay that afternoon. His breathing is thoracic, fast and shallow. His bloodstream is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline because he is already late for work or a meeting. He finishes his 5-minute ritual, and nothing changes. The wealth does not collapse. The empire does not materialize. His life's friction remains identical to yesterday's. The slave then concludes that metaphysics is a lie, and subconscious reprogramming is a new age scam. This slave's error is not philosophical. It is a basic neurobiology and quantum physics error. He is committing thermodynamic stupidity. He is trying to input ultra-complex software code into his biological hard drive, the subconscious. While the main processor is operating at maximum temperature, the fans are spinning at the limit, and the system is under a cybernetic stress attack. In terms of mechanical engineering, this creator is trying to reprogram a Formula One car's onboard computer while the vehicle is racing at 300 kilometers per hour in the middle of a race in the rain. It is impossible. If you put your hand into the engine at that speed, the gears will crush your fingers. To rewrite the autonomous machinery, you first have to stop the vehicle. You have to turn off the main engine of logic, take the car into the darkness of the garage, cool the system, and connect the cable directly to the access port when there is no static resistance. In this chapter, we will destroy the myth of mental hard work. We will teach you the relentless science of brain oscillation. We will study the EEG of poverty and the EEG of absolute domination. You will learn why your beta waves are a reinforced concrete wall that rejects all your ambitions, and how to execute a controlled frequency descent to reach theta and operate as a quantum surgeon. 1. The concrete wall, the tyranny of beta waves. To dominate biological hardware, you must understand how its activity is measured. The brain is an electrochemical reactor. Its billions of neurons communicate via electrical impulses, and this collective activity generates electromagnetic waves measured in hertz, representing cycles per second. When you are awake, analyzing problems, worried about the future, or trying to force a solution through analytical thought, your brain operates in the range of beta waves, 13 to 30 hertz. Beta frequency is the prefrontal lobe's alert state. It is the frequency of survival, linear logic, and the calculation of space and time. In the African savanna, high beta waves were necessary to scan the horizon for lions and calculate escape distance. The catastrophic problem is that, in the modern matrix, the inertial slave lives in a chronic beta state, especially high beta, above 20 hertz. He is perpetually stressed and overanalyzing the algorithm. From the standpoint of mental architecture, the beta state acts as a military-grade firewall between your conscious and subconscious minds. The analytical mind, operating at high frequency, is the nightclub bouncer. Its evolutionary job is to protect the hard drive, basal ganglia, from any new information. The bouncer is skeptical and programmed to reject change. If the bouncer sees your 3D reality as one of scarcity, and you stand before the mirror in a beta state shouting, "I am a millionaire," the bouncer analyzes the phrase, compares it with empirical data, and determines it is a threatening lie. He blocks access. The affirmation bounces off the concrete wall and falls like acoustic trash. The subconscious, down in the darkness, never even knows you spoke. Repeating words while you are tense, anxious, or trying hard is a gross waste of ATP energy. In physics, when you apply force against an immovable wall, you perform no work. Duller. The architect of the now understands that logical brute force is useless against the biological firewall. He does not fight the bouncer. He does not headbutt the concrete door. The architect uses wave physics to change his frequency, becoming undetectable to the frontal lobe's radar and passing through the wall like a ghost. 2. The destructive interference of conscious effort. There is a lethal trap creators fall into when trying to reprogram their autonomous machinery, the illusion of conscious effort. They believe the harder they think about their goal, the faster it will manifest. They frown, grit their teeth, and force themselves to think about success. Let's analyze this with wave physics. We established destructive interference in previous chapters. If you generate an electromagnetic wave, the desire for wealth, but simultaneously maintain a high-frequency beta wave of anxiety or effort to get it, the two waves collide. Effort itself is a signal of resistance. If you have to struggle to believe you are a titan of your industry, you are mathematically communicating to the unified field that in your base state you are not. Effort emits a telemetry of lack. The subconscious mind, that 10,000 horsepower engine, does not respond to effort. It responds to the geometric assumption of certainty. It responds to gravity, not friction. When you are in beta and try to force a visualization, you are wasting energy keeping the frontal lobe lit. You are analyzing your own visualization, asking, "Am I doing it right? Did it work yet?" That critical voice is the static of the system. It is the noise that kills the SNR. To implant the new line of code into the central operating system, you must disable the analyst. You have to sedate the bouncer. You have to drastically reduce the revolutions per minute, RPM, of your brain activity. You must execute the frequency descent. 3. The frequency descent, cooling the reactor and alpha waves. The first stage of neuronal infiltration is crossing the bridge toward alpha waves, 8 to 12 hertz. If the beta state is running at 300 km/h on the highway of anxiety, the alpha state is pressing the clutch, lifting your foot off the gas, and allowing the carbon vehicle to glide by pure inertia, feeling the engine slow down. Physically, the alpha state is reached the moment you close your eyes and withdraw your attention from the external 3D world. In the millisecond, your eyelids cut the massive influx of photons flooding your optic nerve. The frontal lobe stops processing the environment's threat. The brain exhales, frequencies drop. In alpha, the analytical firewall begins to dissolve. The critical voice that tells you it's impossible lowers its volume to a distant murmur. The biological sensation is a pleasant heaviness, a muscular relaxation where your body stops preparing for war and enters a state of parasympathetic restoration. It is in this frequency where the mental anechoic chamber gains its true tactical power. When you isolate yourself in silence, you are executing a reactor cooling maneuver. You are lowering the coolant temperature so you can open the core hatch without the radiation, stress, incinerating you. In the alpha state, the subconscious door is ajar. The mind becomes immensely suggestible. Great creators, writers, and programmers know this state as the prelude to flow. Here, imagination requires no effort. Images arise with fluidity, and the emotional charge begins to align with the vision without the sabotage of doubt. However, for the architect of the now, alpha is only the waiting room. It is a good place to rest and plan, but if you want to rewrite the base architecture of your financial phobias, your rejection traumas, and your revenue limits, you have to descend deeper. You have to go to the server room. You have to reach acoustic vacuum. 4. The quantum operating room, theta waves, and absolute vulnerability. Welcome to the exact coordinate, where the gods of the matrix dictate their laws and where slaves are terrified to enter. The state of theta waves, 4 to 8 Hz. Theta frequency is the hypnagogic state, the thin thermodynamic border between wakefulness and deep sleep. It is the realm of biological twilight. It occurs naturally twice a day in every human, in the precise minutes before falling completely asleep at night and in the brain fog of the first minutes upon waking in the morning. At 4-8 Hz, the frontal lobe, the analytical ego, your name, your history of failures, is completely disconnected. The nightclub bouncer has gone to sleep, the firewall is deactivated, the hood of the Formula One car is wide open, the engine is off, and the hard drive cables are totally exposed in the darkness of the garage. This is the quantum operating room. In theta, your subconscious mind is in absolute vulnerability. It is highly plastic and receptive. Any information, image, or emotional code you inject in this state will completely bypass empirical validation. The subconscious will not check your 3D bank account to see if it's true. It will take the raw data and record it into the basal ganglia as an inarguable geological fact. Here is where you understand humanity's thermal tragedy. What does the 200 Hz slave do during his natural theta windows? Before sleep, the slave checks the news of world crises, reviews his debts, and visualizes tomorrow's work distress. He inputs pure poison and scarcity directly into his hard drive. Upon waking, the slave grabs his cell phone before opening both eyes, injecting a spike of cheap dopamine and reactivity to emails, programming his autonomous machinery to be a reactionary victim for the rest of the day. They are programming their own destruction at the exact millisecond they have power in their hands. The solitary king declares those windows as maximum security electromagnetic sanctuaries. He understands that the theta state is the wet clay of reality. When the architect descends into theta, he stops all entropic thought. He assumes command. In this abyssal depth, visualization no longer requires force. In theta, you simply are the empire. The conscious mind has vanished so much that you do not feel the physical limits of your carbon body. You become a point of consciousness, floating in the zero-point vacuum. When you inject the instruction, the $1 million is a closed fact. The order falls like a lead block. It does not generate waves of resistance. It simply settles, alters your system's density, and upon waking, your entire physiology, posture, gaze, breathing, has been chemically modified to reflect that new geometric truth. You have operated on your own destiny, without using anesthesia. Electromagnetic entanglement fusing slow brain and heavy heart. Brainwave mechanics are only half the thermodynamic equation. For the code injected in theta to consolidate and drag the world's matter toward your spatial coordinate, you need magnetism. You must couple the frequency descent of the brain with the gravitational acceleration of the heart. We have established that the heart is an electromagnet 5,000 times more powerful than the brain. The brain emits the direction, the code, but the heart emits the weight, the gravity. The miracle of manifestation occurs when you achieve coherent electromagnetic entanglement. This happens when your brain is oscillating in the frozen slowness of theta waves, no resistance, no noise, no doubts, and simultaneously, you force your heart to emit the magnetic frequency of quantum lead, the cold, heavy, boring certainty that the order has already been executed in the master server. It is a monstrous biological choreography. Your mind is in the absolute vacuum of nothingness, and your chest is radiating the density of a supermassive black hole. In this state, you are sending a coherent signal to the unified field. The matrix does not detect the frontal lobe's fear because that lobe is off. It only reads the pure intention of the vacuum, theta, backed by the electromotive force of certainty, heart. When you operate repeatedly from this entanglement, your physical body's neural network undergoes a mutation. Cells begin to upregulate the expression of certain genes, epigenetics. Your immune system strengthens. Your base testosterone and dopamine levels readjust. You become a biological battleship. You leave your anechoic chamber and return to the beta world, but the order implanted in the darkness continues executing in the background, ensuring your actions align with your new gravity. 6. Military protocols for frequency infiltration. Brainwave theory makes you a useless academic if you don't have the scalpel in hand to open the skull of your own inertia. Lowering from beta to theta at will requires special forces training. Your mind will try to spit you back to beta with distractions or sleep. You have to walk the razor's edge. Here are the 3 ballistic infiltration protocols to pierce the concrete wall and execute the master code. Protocol 1. The Twilight Hack, leveraging natural windows. The Matrix gives you 2 gaps in the firewall every day. Action. Decree electromagnetic martial law in the first hour of the morning and the last hour of night. Execution. In the 30 minutes before sleep, your phone stays out of the room. 0 screens. You lie down, close your eyes, and as you feel sleep paralysis invading, transition from alpha to theta, you inject your domination code. Do not visualize with effort. Assume the end of your empire. Feel the thermal weight of victory in your chest while you lose consciousness. You will take that order directly into the subconscious ocean for 8 hours of processing. Upon waking, before moving the carbon body and before opening eyes, repeat the injection in that brain fog. You have hijacked the server. Protocol 2. Ballistic respiratory modulation, the mechanical kill switch. You cannot wait for night if a midday crisis demands you recalibrate the underground motor. Action. Use tyrannical breath control to force blood chemistry to alter brain oscillation. Execution. Lock yourself in your sanctuary. Sit with a rigid spine to avoid falling into delta sun sleep. Start 4 to 7 to 8 vacuum induction breathing. Inhale for 4s. Hold for 7s, this floods the brain and forces erratic thought to cease, and exhale through the mouth for 8s. The extremely long exhalation is a direct hack to the vagus nerve. It shouts to the brainstem, "We are in absolute thermal safety." Repeat for 10 minutes. You will feel a light dizziness, a ringing, and spatial disconnection. Congratulations, you have strangled beta waves. The frontal lobe is sedated. Protocol 3. Reverse sensory overload, deprivation, and thermal isolation. The frontal lobe stays in beta because the environment bombards it with photons and sound. Action. Build or simulate a sensory deprivation chamber to isolate the hardware. Execution. Once a week, enter an absolutely dark room. Use industrial earplugs or active noise-cancelling headphones playing brown noise or 6 Hz isochronic frequencies, theta. Lie on the hard floor. Do not move a single millimeter for 45 minutes. Deprived of light and sound, the analytical brain collapses. You will sink into a deep, hypnagogic state. In that black vacuum, where you are not a body but pure quantum information, you will visualize the scaffolding of your business and your status as a titan. You inject the code with the cold violence of a lightning bolt hitting a dark sea. Chapter 3. The Language of Matter, Acoustics, Symbols, and Pure Emotion. The subconscious does not speak Spanish. It does not understand English, Mandarin, or French. Your deep mind is deaf to syntax and blind to grammar. It is a blind mechanism of survival and execution that operates in a language infinitely more ancient, dense, and powerful. In this chapter, we are going to eradicate your dependence on hollow words. We will delve into the cryptography of the unified field. You will learn to abandon 3D linguistics and master the true language of matter, acoustic resonance, data compression through geometric symbols, and the gravitational weight of pure emotion. You will discover how to give orders to your biology so that the matrix has no other mathematical choice but to surrender to your code. 1. The farce of 3D linguistics, the evolution of hardware. To understand why your verbal affirmations bounce off the wall of your skull without generating any kinetic work, $0, we must dissect the evolutionary history of your carbon brain. Your brain is composed of overlapping layers built over millions of years of evolution. The outermost and most recent layer is the neocortex. This is the crown of humanity. Here is where you process language, logic, and where you formulate goals like, I want $10 million. The neocortex is brilliant, but it is fragile, slow, and consumes obscene amounts of metabolic energy, ATP. Below it, wrapped in cranial darkness, lies the limbic system and the reptilian brain. This is the absolute seat of the subconscious. This biological structure is hundreds of millions of years old. It evolved eons before the first hominid uttered a single syllable. The subconscious survived ice ages and apex predators without using a single word. It survived by reading the environment through frequencies and patterns. When you try to reprogram this ancestral beast by speaking to it in a language, I am a winner, the neocortex processes it, but the limbic system audits the signal. It says, the neocortex is sending a linguistic package. I proceed to check the body's telemetry. Heart rate is fast with fear. Posture is hunched. Conclusion, reject file. The word is the easiest lie to utter. Your neocortex can lie, but your electromagnetic frequency cannot be faked. The architect of the now despises cheap motivation. He understands that speaking to the subconscious without altering the body's thermal state is like trying to put out a forest fire by reading a poem to the flames. You have to go down to the engine room and speak the native language of steel, weight, vibration, and impact. 2. Quantum acoustics and cymatics, the sculpture of matter. If words do not matter, what matters about sound? The answer is in wave physics and cymatics, the study of visible sound and vibration. In cymatics experiments, sand is placed on a metal plate and subjected to frequencies. Low frequencies create entropy, but specific pure frequencies reorganize the grains into perfect mathematical orders. Sound is not a ghost. It is a mechanical force that physically reorganizes dense matter. Your body is 70% fluid. Your subconscious is housed in tissues bathed in cerebrospinal fluid and blood. When you speak, you are not just expelling air. You are making your skull vibrate and sending mechanical waves to the core of your cells. The subconscious does not hear the dictionary meaning of your words. It hears the density, tone, resonance, and frequency of your voice. If you say, I will dominate this market, but your voice is high-pitched, shaky, and nasal, the internal cymatics of your fluids reflect fear. The subconscious reads that disorder and collapses failure. The solitary king masters the acoustics of command. When the architect emits a quantum decree in his anechoic chamber, he does not shout. Shouting is the tool of those desperate to be heard. The architect speaks from the belly. He drops his diaphragm. He lowers his tone to the most resonant frequency his carbon vehicle allows. He emits a heavy acoustic wave loaded with quantum lead. That low-frequency vibration makes the ribcage tremble. The vagus nerve sends an immediate signal to the reptilian brain. The operator speaks with the cadence of an apex predator. The physical vibration of your own voice is the hammer that breaks the subconscious ice. It doesn't matter what you say, it matters how much the sound weighs in your chest when you say it. 3. Visual geometry, the compression power of symbols. The second dialect of the language of matter is vision. But not the fuzzy visualization sold by fake gurus, rather the engineering of symbols, sigils, and visual architecture. The human brain processes images 60,000 times faster than text. The optical path is a broadband highway connected directly to subconscious memory. Powerful religions, corporations, and regimes have never dominated the masses with 1,000-page manuals. They dominated them using symbols, crosses, stars, bit and apple logos. A symbol is a thermodynamic zip file. It is a hyper-compressed data package. When you see a luxury logo, your brain doesn't read letters. In a millisecond, your amygdala decompresses the file and floods you with status, power, and wealth. All that is transferred to your hardware without a syllable. The inertial slave doesn't understand this. He writes long lists of goals that his frontal lobe forgets, or he builds mediocre vision boards that only emit a frequency of lack. The architect of the now operates like an elite corporation. He designs his own symbol of command, a sigil. He takes the immensity of his empire and condenses that massive reality into a single abstract geometric image. It might be a rune or a combination of precise lines that only he understands. By associating his ambition with that simple shape, the architect bypasses the conscious firewall. The logical bouncer doesn't see $1 million, which he would reject. He only sees an innocent drawing, but the subconscious reads the geometry and downloads the full file. The architect carves that symbol on his desk or sets it as a wallpaper. During his raw action routine, his eyes capture that symbol thousands of times. Each visual impact is a drip of binary code injected into the underground engine. It is a constant, relentless geometric reprogramming with zero resistance. 4. Emotional density, the gravitational weight of the motor. We reach the core of the thermonuclear reaction. You can master resonance and symbols, but if your carbon vehicle lacks emotional density, you are an empty shell. Emotion is the primary language of the 3D matrix. Emotion, energy in motion. The brain generates the electric field, but the heart generates the magnetic field, gravity. The subconscious is a vault that only opens when the thermal scanner detects extreme emotional temperature. It does not record boring events. It only burns into your hardware what is bathed in the chemistry of absolute intensity, paralyzing terror, sharp pain, or overwhelming euphoria. The biological tragedy is that it is evolutionarily easier to generate intense terror than deep certainty. Fear is cheap, conviction is expensive. When the slave tries to reprogram his destiny, he does so feeling hope. Hope is the most toxic, cowardly, and low-density emotion in the universe. Hope implies doubt. When you have hope, you are shouting in binary, there is a high probability of failure. The matrix reads that lack of density and collapses the wave in failure. The emotional language of the architect is called quantum lead. It is not hysterical joy. It is the heavy, glacial, slightly boring feeling of tactical inevitability. If you have your house keys in your pocket, you don't spend the day hoping to enter. You simply know you have possession. That absolute certainty relaxes your nervous system and emits a massive, stable magnetic signal. To inject the code, you must sit in the vacuum and force your body to secrete the chemistry of possession. Feel your shoulders drop. Feel the psychopathic coldness of someone who has already cashed the check in the master server and is just waiting for the 3D bureaucracy to process the paperwork. That emotional weight, that lack of desperation, is the supreme command. The subconscious scans that thermal signature and restructures. 5. The entanglement of gesture, biomechanics as syntax. The last dialect of the subconscious is proprioception, the brain's awareness of posture and the spatial occupation of the physical body. The body is not just the mind's slave, it is a high-flow data interface. Through the fascial network and muscles, your posture sends gigabytes of information straight to the brainstem. The 200 Hz slave sits with hunched shoulders and a sunken chest, a posture of submission. In that state of biomechanical defeat, he tries to listen to success affirmations. The thermodynamic stupidity is dazzling. The brain receives the order, "I am a king," but the joint telemetry says, "We are crushed and surrendering." Survival biology always has priority over linguistic fantasy. The subconscious reads the body, ignores the audio, and injects submission hormones. The architect of the now uses his skeleton and musculature as the primary keyboard to program his destiny. He understands that movement is quantum syntax. To teach your subconscious you are the apex predator, you must hack proprioception by occupying physical space with silent violence. Thoracic expansion, the sternum rises. By opening the ribcage, you adopt the biological posture of the alpha who exposes vital organs because he knows there are no threats capable of harming him. Lead gestures. Your movements stop being erratic. You walk with the cadence of one who owns the ground. You don't run for an elevator. The world waits for your gravity. The monolithic gaze. Your eye contact is not evasive. You observe with the immobility of a security camera. You record data, but you do not react emotionally. When you force your vehicle to inhabit this biomechanical geometry, even when your bank account is at zero, the brain reads the tension sensors. The subconscious concludes, the chassis is operating in absolute domination. I proceed to align external reality and hormones to match the muscular telemetry. 6 military protocols for native coding. Knowing the dialects of matter makes you a theorist. To be the admiral, you must apply biological cryptography in the trenches. You have to speak to the beast in its native language daily until it submits. Here are the 3 protocols to inject the master code into the basal ganglia, bypassing the frontal lobe forever. Protocol 1. Symbolic anchoring, the sigil of domination. Action. Design your own thermodynamic zip code. Execution. In your anechoic chamber, determine your most colossal goal. Now draw an abstract geometric symbol that has no linguistic meaning. Stare at it for 10 minutes while flooding your chest with quantum lead. Bind the shape to the emotional density. From today, that symbol replaces your written goal lists. Place it on your screen or wear it on a ring. Every time your optic nerve captures it, your subconscious will detonate the chemistry of the empire without spending a single hertz of conscious energy. Protocol 2. Command acoustics, low-frequency modulation. Stop whispering to the universe like a beggar and start emitting the order as the architect. Action. Install the diaphragmatic resonance command for hypnagogic programming. Execution. When lying down to sleep in the border of sleep paralysis, do not repeat mental phrases. Whisper your order aloud, but force it from the deep abdomen. Make your chest vibrate with each word. The authority is collapsed. The machine operates in abundance. Feel the physical vibration in your ribs. That mechanical wave will travel to the brainstem, sealing the command in the hard drive as you enter the dream. Protocol 3. Kinesthetic saturation, the holographic rehearsal. Don't tell the subconscious what you want. Force it to feel the physical weight of what you already have. Action. Use 3D objects to hack the neural network through touch. Execution. The subconscious doesn't distinguish between a realistic rehearsal and reality. If your goal is signing high-value contracts, don't just imagine it. Sit at your desk in an alpha state, take your heaviest pen, feel the cold metal, smell the ink, and sign your name with a thermodynamic weight that pierces the table. Inject the heavy emotion of victory into your grip. Do this 100 times until it's automated. Chapter 4. Thermal leaks. Eradicating the emotional parasite. Apathy invades him. He ends up surrendering to cheap distractions to numb the void and heaviness he feels in his chest. The slave asks himself, why am I so tired if I slept 8 hours? Why do I lack willpower? The answer is not in his nutrition, nor in his lack of motivation. The answer is pure fluid engineering. The slave is suffering from an invisible thermodynamic hemorrhage. He is trying to pilot a high-performance vessel while the hull of his ship, his subconscious mind, has dozens of open valves through which pressure is escaping. These open valves are not success projects, they are parasitic frictions. They are unresolved grudges from 10 years ago, childhood rejection traumas, and inherited fears. Each of these poorly closed valves is consuming a vital percentage of his biological boiler's steam and devouring his ATP. By midday, the engine pressure has dropped to zero. You cannot collapse a million-dollar reality with leaks. The universe will not hand you the gravitational mass of an empire if you are a perforated vessel. In this chapter, we will abandon traditional psychology and apply forensic mechanical engineering. We will identify the thermal leaks of your nervous system and execute a ruthless, cold, and surgical amputation. 1. Anatomy of the leak, the engine spinning in a vacuum. To understand how the past destroys your financial present, you must understand how the brain manages unsutured emotional wounds. In cognitive psychology, there is a principle called the Zeigarnik effect. The brain maintains constant tension over unfinished tasks much more than over those already completed and archived. When you experience a high-friction event, a scam, a public humiliation, or a brutal rejection, and you fail to process that violence, the event remains open in your organism. Your amygdala labels that event as a predator, still lurking in the dark. Because the brain assumes danger is active, it turns on a specific neural network. This network is responsible for silent rumination and toxic internal dialogue. While you try to focus on a sales strategy, a part of your brain is in the background replaying the time your partner stole from you. You are mentally rehearsing what you should have said. You are feeling the rage in your stomach as if it were happening now. Your conscious mind thinks you are just remembering, but your biological body is dreadfully literal. Human anatomy does not distinguish between a real physical threat and a simulation in your mind. Every time you play that parasitic memory, the hypothalamus fires stress signals. Cortisol is released. Heart rate is altered. You are spending real thermodynamic energy and exhausting your adrenal glands to fight a ghost. Think of a car parked in your driveway. The handbrake is on, but you have the gas pedal floored. The engine roars at 6,000 RPM, gas burns at a fierce rate, and pistons suffer massive wear. But the vehicle does not move an inch. That is your subconscious mind operating under the infection of unresolved traumas. The engine is spinning in a vacuum. Your zero-point reactor is producing infinite energy, but instead of moving the gears of your empire, you are sending that current directly down the drain of yesterday. You must manually close these valves. Thermodynamics of resentment, the principle of communicating vessels. Among the parasites installed in your subconscious, none is more lethal than resentment. 200 Hertz Society has stained forgiveness with religious morality. They tell you to forgive because it is right. This narrative lacks gravitational weight. The slave refuses to forgive because he feels his hatred is his shield. Let's destroy this ignorance using fluid physics. In physics, the principle of communicating vessels dictates that if you connect two containers, the water from the fuller one will flow into the emptier one until levels equalize. Pressure always seeks to balance scarcity. When you hate someone, you are connecting a thick pipe to them. Hatred is a high-density, high-temperature emotion. The law of attention dictates that your life force flows exactly where you focus your internal gaze. Every morning you spend cursing the person who scammed you. You are taking your precious fuel, the ATP meant for your millions, and sending it directly to your enemy. You are operating as their portable generator. You are their spare biological battery. You are donating your life force to them while you remain exhausted and energy bankrupt. By connecting with a low-vibration individual, your vitality drains toward them until you are both equal in the same misery. Resentment is not a shield. It is the most pathetic form of servility. It is working for free for the person you despise most. The architect of the now executes forgiveness out of pure, sociopathic thermodynamic greed. He refuses to give a single drop of his fuel to a 200 Hertz insect. He uses the electromagnetic guillotine. Tactical indifference is the most perfect thermal insulator. By saying, "Your existence no longer causes me rage or joy, you are a weightless ghost," the current is cut. The parasite suffocates. You recover thousands of liters of pressure immediately. Forgiveness is not a gift for the other. It is the hostile recovery of your own capital. 3. Inherited fears, The structural flaw of origin. Not all cracks draining your pressure were opened by you. Some of the most destructive fissures came from the factory. They were inherited from the original builders, your ancestors, and are embedded in your DNA. Modern epigenetics has destroyed the notion that your genetics are an unmovable destiny. Epigenetics proves that trauma, famine, and chronic stress suffered by your grandparents left chemical tags on their genes. These tags were passed to you. This explains illogical biological terror. Some creators have a paralyzing panic of wealth despite never having experienced ruin. That is the ghost of a great-grandfather. The ancestor's terror is fused into the iron of the descendant's basal ganglia. It acts as a massive anchor tied to your ship with an invisible chain. The inertial slave accepts these fears as his identity. He says, "The men in my family have always been nervous with money." He surrenders to the structural flaw of the past. The architect of the now inspects his biology like a naval engineer. He understands that although the genetic tag exists, the brain is neuroplastic. Brutal behavior can tear those tags off. When he detects an irrational fear, he stops the machines, isolates the fear, and declares the amputation of origin. I revoke the authority of this fear over my blood. I proceed to seal the structural flaw with quantum lead. You are not the trash bin for your family tree's tragedies. You are the evolutionary firewall. Your duty is not to honor their suffering by repeating it, but to annihilate the chain of misery by increasing your own density. Or forensic inspection, locating the fissures. Eradicating emotional parasites cannot be left to mystical chance. You must perform a technical audit of your carbon body. Your biological body is a perfect telemetry panel. To locate the parasites, you don't need years on a couch. You only need to monitor your thermal valves in real time throughout your 24 hours of operation. Pressure collapses. Sudden energy drops. The most absolute indicator of a leak is an inexplicable drop in vitality. You are working like a god, and suddenly a simple email or a specific name in conversation cuts your strings. In less than 3 seconds, your stomach contracts, your breath becomes heavy, and apathy covers you. The slave assumes he just got sleepy. The architect stops the propellers immediately. He knows he stepped on an underwater mine. That stimulus just opened the floodgate of a hidden trauma. Forensic inspection requires you to freeze the scene at that moment. You trace the invisible hose back to its dark origin. Ask with mechanical brutality, which engine room just opened? Why has my aggression reservoir emptied? Once identified, you drag the parasite to the light. The subconscious is lethal because it operates in shadows. When you expose a parasite to the light of cold analysis, it dries up. You isolate it and prepare to cauterize. Thermal cauterization, extracting ore and burning slag. Eradicating a parasitic memory doesn't mean magical amnesia. You won't forget the scam. Physics dictates that matter cannot disappear into nothingness, but its structure can be dismantled. The goal of thermal cauterization is to squeeze the past event of its painful load and retain only the mechanics of the lesson. In a metal plant, the engineer doesn't forget the rusted scrap. He throws it into the crucible at 2,000 degrees. Pure metal separates, and toxic paint rises as slag. When you extract a traumatic memory, you apply this same protocol. You feel the burning memory of a bankruptcy. The slave burns with the slag of guilt. The architect puts on the thermal gloves of psychopathic detachment. He takes the memory and separates the useful ore. What failed? Liquidity and trust in low-frequency individuals. I install this wisdom as steel shields today. This failure has made him a more lethal armored vessel. Once the useful material is rescued, the guilt and shame become obsolete. They are useless ash. At that point, you apply the guillotine. You stop feeling pity for the past you. You declare, the biological structure that made that mistake no longer exists. Only the armor remains. The event has lost its ability to suck your oxygen. 6. Military protocols for motor isolation. The Matrix will throw mud at you continuously if you don't execute dictatorial maintenance. A high-performance biological machine requires inflexible cleaning routines. Here are the 3 military execution commands to keep the submarine's hull without a single crack, leaving 100% of your steam available for your empire. Protocol 1. The respiratory tourniquet. Real-time cut. The subconscious will throw echoes of the past during the day to test your weakness. Action. Zero tolerance for mental arguments with the past. Execution. The millisecond you detect your mind fighting a ghost, apply the tourniquet. Hold your breath for 5 seconds. Hit the desk with your knuckles and command, closing valve, reclaiming internal pressure. Immediately fix your gaze on the physical target in front of you. If you kill the organic process in the first 5 seconds, you deny the memory its ATP, and the gears of that parasite begin to rust from lack of use. Protocol 2. Purging the boiler, the nightly emptying. You cannot go to sleep with the day's conflicts burning halfway in the combustion chamber. Action. Establish the gas purge protocol before biological disconnection. Execution. 15 minutes before sleep, sit in the dark. Review your day like a quality inspector. Identify thermal friction events. Don't repress them. Extract the useful ore. I must adjust my prices. Once rescued, order the slag purge. The event is processed. I order the expulsion of toxic gas. Boiler resets to 0 pressure. Exhale a deep sigh. You enter sleep with the machinery clean, ready to rebuild overnight. Protocol 3. The titanium vault. Density overwrite. The best way to prevent a rat from nesting in an empty pipe is to fill it with molten lead until it bursts. Action. Build and visit your titanium vault daily. Execution. Create a record of your most crushing victories. The day you endured the pain and won. When you feel an old fear try to leak through a crack, you throw open the doors of this vault. Inject the memory of your own monstrosity into your veins. Flood the nervous system with the forensic evidence that you are an indestructible block of titanium. The fear parasite is smothered by the colossal density of your record. Chapter 5. Cellular Alchemy. The Epigenetics of Underground Command. Your body is not a static prison of flesh. It is a vast industrial complex composed of 50 trillion cells. Within that colossal factory, DNA makes absolutely no decisions. DNA is a dead file. The true tyrant, the operations director, dictating which machines turn on and which poisons are released, is your subconscious mind. In this chapter, we will descend to the microscope. We will move past superficial self-help to enter the science of epigenetics and molecular alchemy. You will learn that your thoughts and the heavy frequency of your emotions do not stay floating in the ether. They transform into real chemical messengers that rewrite your biology. You will discover how the subconscious is the chemical foreman of your anatomy. If you let it operate in panic, it will order the factory to build paper walls. But if you take command with the icy arrogance of the architect of the now, you will force your own cells to transmute weakness into biological titanium. 1. The fraud of genetic destiny. The blueprint and the engineer. To claim sovereign control over your physical matter, you must first understand how the architectural blueprint of life works. During the dark age of genetics, science believed that DNA was the absolute dictator of biology. It was thought that genes turned themselves on or off autonomously, dictating your health and character. This is the Newtonian mechanical view, a clockwork universe where you are just a gear without will. But quantum biology and epigenetics, EP means above genetics, discovered a terrifying and majestic truth. The gene does not have the ability to turn itself on or off. The gene has no brain. It is just a piece of molecular tape. It is like the blueprint of a building lying on a table. A blueprint cannot build a skyscraper by itself, nor can it demolish it. It needs an engineer to read it and a foreman to order the workers to execute the work. That foreman is the cellular environment. And in humans, the environment is how your subconscious interprets the world. Your 50 trillion cells are locked in absolute darkness. They have no eyes to see your bank account. They have no ears to hear the criticism of your enemies. They do not know if you are in a luxury mansion or a battlefield. The only way a cell knows what is happening in the 3D universe is by reading the blood. And the one who alters the blood chemistry is your brain, ruthlessly governed by your subconscious motor. If you, through your unresolved fears, convince your subconscious that the world is a hostile place and that you will fail, the subconscious does not question you. It assumes war is imminent. It activates the hypothalamus and pours a chemical cocktail of terror, cortisol, adrenaline, histamine into your bloodstream. Your cells drink that blood. They read the chemical signal of war and scarcity. They ignore the blueprints for growth and select exclusively the blueprints for emergency survival and inflammation. Through your thermal cowardice and inability to govern your subconscious, you have just ordered your own biological factory to sabotage itself, oxidize, and fall ill. You have poisoned the well of your own workers. 2. The chemical foreman, the gate of the cell membrane. To master the alchemy of matter, we must understand exactly how the invisible order, the subconscious belief, becomes solid flesh. We must observe the walls of the fortress, the cell membrane. The membrane of each cell is not simple plastic. It is a fortified wall full of thousands of protein antennas and locks known as receptors. These locks are waiting for the exact chemical key, ligands like hormones and neuropeptides, to open and change the cell's behavior. Your subconscious mind is the great locksmith of the body. Every chronic emotion you harbor and every deep order you emit translates in the brain into a specific molecule. Joy has its own molecular shape, dopamine, serotonin. Domination and cold certainty have theirs, testosterone, oxytocin, DHEA. Panic and victimhood have theirs. When the architect of the now descends to 0 point and injects the frequency of quantum lead, that heavy, immovable certainty, the brain synthesizes neuropeptides. These molecules travel through the blood, reach the cell walls, and fit perfectly into the locks. When the lock turns, the order of the solitary king penetrates the cell and travels to the nucleus. Receiving the chemical order of unlimited resources, the cell deploys supreme genetic blueprints. It begins to synthesize heat-shock proteins to repair tissues. It accelerates ATP production in the mitochondria. It strengthens the immune system into an impenetrable barrier. Your bones literally become denser. Your brain forges thicker neural pathways. Your muscles operate with greater thermodynamic efficiency. You have stopped being a slave trapped in a weak body to become the supreme alchemist. You have dictated an acoustic and electromagnetic order in the darkness of your mind, and that order has transformed into bone, blood, and armor. Biology is not your destiny. Biology is the wet clay upon which the subconscious prints its seal. 3. The architecture of stress, dismantling the ship. We must observe the devastating physical consequences that occur when you abandon the helm and allow the subconscious to operate under the guidelines of collective fear. What happens to your factory when the foreman believes you are about to starve because you lost a contract? The survival response is triggered. In biology, energy is a zero-sum game. There is no infinite energy available for all systems instantly. You must prioritize. When the subconscious floods the system with cortisol, it orders an immediate dismantling of all functions not strictly necessary to fight or run in the next 10 minutes. Suppression of growth, cellular regeneration, deep digestion, and the creation of new creative neural connections are expensive processes. Cortisol stops all this. The growth machinery shuts down. If you live stressed by money, you literally stop regenerating. You begin to thermally age in fast forward. Your hull oxidizes. Immune blackout. The immune system requires an astronomical amount of ATP. But if the subconscious believes a predator, the financial crisis, will eat you today, it considers protecting you from a virus a waste of energy. It shuts down defenses. That is why the distressed creator always gets sick after a failed launch. Dulling of intelligence. To ensure a fast, instinctive reaction, blood vessels in the frontal lobe, where genius resides, contract. Blood is redirected to the reptilian brain and the limb muscles. In a state of panic, you become biologically and temporarily stupid. You are unable to see the engineering solution to the problem. The inertial slave lives his entire miserable life in this state of chronic emergency. He has programmed his underground motor to interpret every small obstacle as a mortal threat. His cells are in a constant state of siege. He has ordered his own biology to destroy construction tools and turn them into rusted swords for ghosts. Film? Forging cellular sovereignty, the titanium engine. Against this biological ruin stands the architecture of the Titan. The architect of the now understands that the external matrix is a rear-view mirror of his internal chemistry. To curve the space-time of the industry, he must first establish an absolute chemical tyranny within his own skin. He must operate from the state of growth and repair. The goal is not to relax like a pacifist yogi. The goal is to operate from the rest of the apex predator. The predator is not scared of the jungle. He is the danger of the jungle. When you clear the subconscious valves and install the code of authority, you flip the switch. Your hypothalamus stops the cortisol cascade. Instead, the factory foreman begins to release the chemistry of sovereignty. DHEA hormone, known as the molecule of vitality and anti-aging. It is the direct antagonist of cortisol. When your subconscious perceives victory, it floods your system with DHEA. This molecule accelerates tissue reconstruction, sharpens neural resistance, and grants you that cold, magnetic glow of authority. High-density dopamine. Unlike cheap dopamine from a screen, the empire-focused subconscious releases heavy dopamine linked to strategic advancement. This chemistry turns hard work into biological pleasure. You no longer struggle to work 14 hours. The body demands it. Oxytocin and testosterone, the king's matrix. This chemical combination relaxes the cardiovascular system. Your blood vessels dilate. Your heart beats with strength, but no hurry. Your frontal lobe receives blood rich in oxygen, letting you solve puzzles easily. In this epigenetic state of command, your body is a thermodynamic amplifier. The magnetic field of a heart bathed in the chemistry of triumph is so dense it alters the behavior of 200 Hz entities in your path. Without a word, your physiology screams domination. This is cellular alchemy, transforming bone into a weapon. The placebo effect demystified, engineering belief. If you doubt the dictatorial power of the subconscious over flesh, look at the most documented and feared phenomenon in the pharmaceutical industry, the placebo effect. Classical medicine considers it a statistical nuisance, an error where a patient heals because they believed a sugar pill was real drug. The architect of the now strips the placebo of its mysticism and audits it as pure epigenetic engineering. What is a placebo in mechanical terms? It is the supreme act of hacking the chemical foreman. The patient has a serious illness. His subconscious is steeped in fear, releasing cortisol and worsening the break. Suddenly, an authority figure in a white coat, the doctor, hands him a red pill and says, "This will destroy your disease in 2 weeks." The patient swallows the sugar. His frontal lobe accepts the promise and transfers the code to the subconscious. The blind motor receives the data. The ultimate weapon has been ingested. The subconscious doesn't check the stomach for sugar. It obeys conviction. The millisecond it believes the cure has arrived, it deactivates the stress cascade, turns off cortisol, and turns on genetic repair plans. The body heals using molecular tools that were always there but were blocked by doubt. The sugar pill did nothing. It was the geometric conviction of the subconscious that forced the cells to rewrite their behavior. If a subconscious mind deceived by sugar can eradicate tumors, imagine the power you can unleash if you use this machinery deliberately to annihilate poverty and expand strategic intelligence. You don't need a fake guru in a white coat to give you permission to govern your biology. You are the clinical authority. Your unshakable certainty, the quantum lead, is the pill. When your subconscious accepts that wealth is inevitable, it will alter your blood chemistry and forge the magnetism of an emperor. 6. Military protocols for epigenetic command. Understanding that your cells are waiting for your orders makes you a biological theorist. To act as the monarch of cellular alchemy, you must emit commands the cell membrane cannot ignore. You must use physical and environmental tactics to force the foreman to change shifts. Here are 3 protocols to own your DNA. Protocol 1. Entropic supply block, the terror fast. Your cells cannot initiate titanium reconstruction if the subconscious keeps receiving telegrams that the city is on fire. Action: establish an absolute containment wall against external threat signals. Execution: from this millisecond, all news and crisis talk are forbidden. Close the floodgates. By removing the food of terror, 200 Hz negative info, your amygdala loses its justification for cortisol. The subconscious concludes, the territory is pacified. The epigenetic switch tilts automatically toward growth. You have healed the engine by simple deprivation of toxins. Protocol 2. Biomechanical gravity injection, proprioceptive command. You cannot convince your cells you are king if your skeleton adopts the shape of a frightened servant. Action: force the chemical foreman's change through tyrannical body posture. Execution: before executing raw action, adjust the hardware. Anchor your feet. Raise your sternum as if a steel cable pulled it to the ceiling. Pull your shoulders back and down. Maintain a rigid neck and relaxed jaw. Stay in this dominant posture for 3 minutes. Proprioceptive signals will travel to the limbic system, injecting a code of spatial authority. In less than 180 seconds, the pituitary gland will order a drop in stress and an increase in testosterone. You are using the outer shell to reprogram the inner reactor. Protocol 3. Tactical peace decree, nightly regenerative programming. The most important moment for epigenetics is the transition to deep repair, sleep. If you fall asleep worried, cells work in emergency. If you sleep in sovereignty, cells build the empire. Action: emit the final ceasefire command before entering the quantum operating room. Theta waves. Execution: when you put your head on the pillow, banish all logistical thoughts about tomorrow. Say aloud to your biological vehicle, the tactical friction cycle is over. The perimeter is secured. I authorize cellular machinery to stop surveillance. I order maximum structural regeneration. The engine enters recharge. By emitting this directive at the border of unconsciousness, you ensure you wake up magnetically denser. Chapter 6. The Law of Ballistic Repetition, Forging Neuronal Grooves. Your subconscious mind is not a magical entity that changes its mind because you had a moment of clarity. Your subconscious is a vast and dense network of physical tissue, flesh, nerves, and electrical conduits. It is a biological jungle. If you have spent 20 years walking the path of scarcity, that path is no longer a dirt track. It is an 8-lane highway paved with military-grade asphalt. You cannot destroy that highway with a couple of positive thoughts. To forge the empire of the solitary king, you must apply heavy engineering. In this chapter, we will abandon philosophy to enter pure neurobiology and the strength of materials. You will learn how the brain wires itself through myelin, why initial friction is the only indicator that you are altering matter, and how to use the jackhammer of ballistic repetition to destroy the old inertia and forge neuronal grooves so deep that asymmetric success becomes an unstoppable reflex action. 1. The myth of the water drop and the geology of the brain. Pacifist self-help loves the water metaphor. They tell you, be like water. Observe how a small drop falling patiently for centuries is capable of splitting a rock in half. This is the metaphor of losers and cowards who fear brute force. It is a philosophy designed to justify slowness and a lack of thermal impact. Let us analyze the water metaphor from the perspective of thermodynamics and time. Yes, a water drop can split a rock, but it takes 300 years to achieve it. Your carbon vehicle has a relentless expiration date. You do not have 300 biological years to wait for your doubts to dissolve patiently. The physical universe rewards speed, pressure, and density. The architect of the now despises the water drop. When the architect decides he is going to split the rock of his own subconscious to install a new code of authority, he does not use passive patience. He uses an industrial jackhammer. Ballistic repetition is not the act of repeating a phrase weekly every day. It is the act of taking a physical, acoustic, and thermodynamic command and striking it against the anvil of your nervous system with maximum electromotive force, dozens of times a day, without allowing the metal to cool down. The geology of your brain is called neuroplasticity. Until a few decades ago, science believed the adult brain was a set concrete structure. Neuroplasticity proved that brain tissue is, in reality, thermodynamic clay. Neurons have the physical capacity to break old connections and create entirely new communication bridges. There is a maxim in neurobiology formulated by Donald Hebb. Neurons that fire together, wire together. If you feel the panic of ruin and simultaneously abandon your work to distract yourself, you are firing two neurons. You are welding panic to flight. Do it 100 times and you will have built a steel cable. But if you feel the panic of ruin and, instead of fleeing, you tie yourself to the chair and work with the cold fury of quantum lead, you are firing two new neurons. You are welding panic to predatory work. Do it 100 times through ballistic repetition and you will have forged a new groove. 2. The biological insulator, myelin and paving the highway. To understand why the first days of a new habit feel like pushing a freight train with bare hands, and why months later that same habit executes without effort, we must look at the electrical insulation of your nerves. Myelin. Imagine the neurons of your brain as raw copper wires transmitting electrical current. If you run a bare copper wire across the ground and send an electrical pulse through it, much of the electricity will dissipate or leak into the ground. The signal will arrive at the other side, weak and slow. This is exactly what a new neuronal groove looks like in your head. The day you decide to operate with Spartan discipline, you are sending electricity through a bare, newly installed wire. The resistance is brutal. Your brain burns massive amounts of vital energy, ATP, trying to make the pulse reach its destination. That is why your head hurts. That is why you feel a bone-breaking fatigue. But here enters the mechanical miracle of the carbon body. If you refuse to surrender and force the electricity through that same bare wire every day, your biological machinery, which hates wasting energy, makes an industrial decision. It calls specialized cells and orders them to pave the highway. These cells begin to wrap the fragile copper wire with a thick layer of white, insulating fat called the myelin sheath. Myelin is the thermal and electrical insulator of your nerves. It works exactly like the protective rubber covering high-voltage cables. As you repeat the ballistic strike, your body deposits more layers. What is the thermodynamic result? An electrical pulse traveling through a neuron without myelin moves at a pathetic speed of 1 meter per second. An impulse traveling through a densely myelinated neuron, the old habit or absolute mastery, travels at the ballistic speed of 100 meters per second. Not only is it 100 times faster, but thanks to the insulation, the energy does not dissipate. The metabolic cost of executing that action falls practically to zero. The 200 Hz inertial slave quits on the 5th day because he does not understand myelin. He believes, working hard will always feel this painful. The architect of the now understands that initial biological fatigue is a temporary tax. He knows the pain will only last until the biological workers finish depositing the myelin. He strikes the anvil day after day with a psychopathic smile because he knows the empire will soon operate on autopilot. Strength of materials, crossing the biological valley of death. In construction engineering, before erecting a structure of titanium and steel, you must first demolish the rotten building that occupied the land. You cannot build on top of rubble. In your brain, this demolition process is a thermodynamic hell that we call the biological valley of death. Visualize your brain as a roadmap. You have a monstrously wide, perfectly lit and paved highway. It is the highway of victimhood and distraction. Next to this highway, there is a dark and dense jungle. You want to build a new path through that jungle, the path of the architect, laser focus, and quantum lead. When you wake up the first day, you try to walk through the jungle. You have to hack away branches with a machete. You sweat, you bleed, and you move 1 meter in 3 hours. Meanwhile, your mammalian brain screams at you, "Idiot, why are we wasting so much energy when we have a comfortable highway right next to us?" The brain will always seek the path of least resistance. It will try by all electrochemical means to push you back to the old highway. It will send you physical pain, anxiety, and uncontrollable cravings for cheap dopamine. This is the valley of death, the period where the old highway is still attractive and the new path is friction hell. To cross this valley without being devoured by your own inertia, you must apply starvation deprivation. In biology, if a nerve conduit is not used, the body identifies it as a waste of nutrients. It activates a process called synaptic pruning. The workers go to the old highway and recycle the materials. Your only job is to deny passage to the old road. No matter how much your head hurts, you strictly forbid yourself from returning to the old pattern. You tie yourself to the mast. Every time you force electricity down the new jungle path, you are simultaneously ordering the construction of titanium and the demolition of trash. 4. Ballistic saturation, density over duration. The concept of repetition has been misunderstood. Gurus teach that you must repeat a habit mechanically for 21 days. But if you repeat a physical movement while your mind is bored or distracted, neuroplasticity does not activate. The brain only myelinates cables if it perceives the action is of extreme urgency. To convince biology that the new habit is vital, the repetition must have a colossal gravitational weight. It must be a bombardment. We call this ballistic saturation. The formula for saturation is not action x time, but action x emotional density x atmospheric pressure. Think of how a coin is forged. They don't put a piece of metal on a table and stroke it 1,000 times with a brush to give it the shape of a king's face. They put the metal in a hydraulic press and drop a steel die with a force of 200 tons in a fraction of a second. The impact is so massive that the metal deforms. For your subconscious to record the code of the empire, it is not enough to do your work lazily. You must apply the hydraulic press. When you decide to execute your repetition, do not do it cold. Lock yourself in the anechoic chamber. Regulate your breathing to lower to alpha waves. Inject the frequency of quantum lead. Force your skeleton to adopt the posture of the apex predator. Feel the weight of absolute authority circulating through your veins. And then, in that state of emotional hypersaturation, execute the physical action with a silent and calculated violence. The brain enters a state of shock and wraps the neuron in myelin at a dizzying rate. 5. The turning point, the inertia of the new mass. If you endure the friction, if you cross the valley of death and saturate your nervous system with the impact of the hydraulic die, the laws of physics guarantee you a reward that borders on divinity. The biological phase transition occurs. In physics, when you heat water, at 99 degrees it remains liquid. It absorbs energy and seems not to change. But when you inject just one more degree and it reaches 100 degrees Celsius, a sudden structural collapse occurs. The water leaves its liquid state and turns into high-pressure gas, steam. That single degree transforms water into the force capable of moving massive steel locomotives. In the reprogramming of your underground engine, the boiling point arrives when the new neuronal circuit reaches total myelination. One dawn, the alarm sounds at 4:00 a.m. Your frontal lobe does not have to fight. Your mind does not argue. Your physical body rises with the elastic violence of a released spring. The old habit of doubt has been completely pruned. The titanium path is now the path of zero resistance. In this moment of transition, the law of inertia inverts in your favor. In the past, you had to spend an absurd amount of energy trying to be successful. Now, your autonomous machine has been coded for 3D domination. Your brain spends the minimum ATP to execute actions that would generate a panic attack in a slave. Suddenly, it is failure or laziness that would require a gigantic effort from you. You have become a luxury passenger in your own battleship. Your subconscious engine has assumed the task of hunting wealth 24 hours a day. 6. Military protocols for neuronal bombardment. Knowing about neuroplasticity will not insulate your brain's wires. To force your carbon body to pave the new highways, you must subject it to regimes of thermodynamic punishment and reward. You have to be the relentless commander of your own biology. Here are the 3 ballistic protocols for forging titanium in your basal ganglia. Protocol 1. The 66-day inflection hammer, the law of the die. The 21-day myth is for fragile habits. Restructuring your identity from slave to emperor demands a longer, more brutal bombardment. Action. Establish a state of biological exception for 66 uninterrupted days for the injection of a single master skill or belief. Execution. Choose a high-friction action that will collapse your empire. For the next 66 days, you are biologically forbidden to go to sleep if you have not executed the hammer's impact. Each impact must be executed under the order of quantum lead. If you fail one day, the asphalt cools, and you must reset the counter to 0. Protocol 2. Structural starvation. Sealing the old highway. You cannot expect the old road to disappear if you keep using it as an escape route, only on weekends. Action. Execute the absolute blocking of the triggers of your old identity. Execution. If your old circuit activated when you saw toxic content, dynamite the bridge. Delete the apps. Apply the electromagnetic guillotine to 200 Hz conversations. By removing the external stimulus, the brain cannot find the key to turn on the old circuit. Deprived of electricity, the old connection begins synaptic pruning. You will feel a lethal void. Endure it. It is the sound of your weakness disintegrating. Protocol 3. The dopaminergic landing strip. Physical anchoring. The brain accelerates the paving of the new highway if it receives a heavy hormonal discharge immediately after the friction. Action. Hack the reward circuit by linking the end of tactical suffering with a closing of biological victory. Execution. When you finish your high-pressure work session, do not just get up. Stop. Close your eyes and force your body to generate a controlled dopamine spike. Smile with aggressive coldness. Feel a deep thoracic expansion and say aloud, "Myelination confirmed." You are using the chemistry of triumph to water the fresh neuronal groove. Chapter 7. The Terror Short Circuit. Subduing the Amygdala in the Dark. There comes a moment in the construction of every empire just before crossing the threshold toward asymmetric wealth or massive recognition, in which the autonomous machinery enters into total rebellion. You have done the heavy lifting. You have isolated your environment, endured the friction, and reprogrammed your engine. The goal is right in front of you. The great opportunity, the $1,000,000 contract, the launch of the masterpiece that will destroy your old life and catapult you into the orbit of the gods, is just one single move away. And then, in the darkness of the night before, the beast awakens. Your chest compresses as if in a hydraulic press. Your heart beats with a wild arrhythmia. A cold sweat covers your carbon vehicle. Your mind is assaulted by a primitive, paralyzing, and irrational terror. A guttural voice from the depths of your nervous system screams that you are a fraud, that you are going to lose everything, and that you must cancel the operation immediately. The 200 Hz inertial slave, terrified by this biological mutiny, surrenders. He calls his team and cancels the launch. He sabotages the contract. He flees the battlefield, believing that terror was an intuition, a signal from the universe, warning him of danger. The slave obeys his own panic and, in doing so, seals his fate. The architect of the now observes the same terror, feels the same tachycardia, but does not retreat a single millimeter. The architect understands that this panic is not a prophecy from the universe. It is a mechanical failure. It is the ship's alarm system sounding by error because the sensors are not calibrated for the new altitude. In this chapter, we will descend into the trenches of biological terror. You will learn the anatomy of the mutiny. We will strip panic of its mystical power and treat it as what it is, a defective valve in your reptilian brain. You will learn to strangle the physiological response in the dark and subdue the beast without a word. 1. The threshold guardian, the amygdala as a catchdog. To neutralize a rebellion, you must first identify its leader. In the mutiny of your biology, the absolute leader is an almond-sized structure located deep in your temporal lobes, the cerebral amygdala. The amygdala is your anatomy's early warning system. It is the thermal radar designed by evolution to detect predators and fire. The monumental problem with the amygdala is that it is a blind, binary, and extremely conservative biological structure. Its thermodynamic golden rule is, anything that is unknown, that is immense, or that drastically alters the current state of rest, is a mortal threat. Think of the amygdala as a massive, aggressive catchdog. Its job is to bark at the unknown. If you spent 20 years of your life in poverty and doubt, that state became the safe territory for the catchdog. When you, from the command bridge, decide you are going to invoice $50,000 in a day, the catchdog does not see success. It sees an unexplored high-tension territory. Instinctively, the dog enters a rage. It begins to pull at the chain, bark with fury, and bite the ship's cables. It unleashes a storm of cortisol and adrenaline in your bloodstream to force you to turn around and return to the known terrain of scarcity. What does the slave do? He tries to reason with it. He tries to pet it. Have you ever tried to calm an enraged Rottweiler by talking to it about quantum physics or petting its head? It will tear your arm off. The biological catchdog does not obey words, it does not obey logic, and above all, it does not obey weakness. It obeys exclusively the relentless demonstration of a superior mechanical force. It obeys the tyranny of the alpha male who takes the steel leash, pulls it with unmovable weight, and forces it physically to sit and shut up. You do not dialogue with terror. You strangle it until it surrenders. 2. Imposter syndrome. The thermodynamics of altitude sickness. We must scientifically classify the specific type of panic that assaults you before success. In inertial psychology, they call it imposter syndrome. They tell you that you need compassion and that you must embrace your inner child. Thermodynamic trash. Imposter syndrome is not a lack of self-esteem, it is altitude sickness. Imagine a climber who has lived his whole life at sea level. His lungs, the density of his blood, and his heart are calibrated for heavy atmospheric pressure. Suddenly you teleport him to the summit of Mount Everest at 8,000 meters. The oxygen is scarce. What happens to his carbon body? It collapses. His heart beats at 150 BPM. Does this climber have a psychological problem? Is he a fraud as a mountaineer? No. Simply, his biological hardware has not had the time necessary to acclimate his red blood cells to the new and extreme altitude. When you are about to make an asymmetric leap, you are rising from the 200 Hz orbit to the 6,000 Hz orbit. The pressure of expectations and the volume of capital are the thin air of the mountain. Your nervous system detects that the atmosphere has changed radically. Your cells, accustomed to the chemistry of mediocrity, feel the vertigo of extreme greatness. Your amygdala reads this and concludes, "We have climbed too high." The architect of the now, when he feels the blow of imposter syndrome, does not seek comfort. He smiles with grit teeth. He recognizes the tachycardia and cold sweat as the exact metric of his success. He says, "Magnificent. My lungs burn and oxygen is scarce. I am exactly at 8,000 meters. Vertigo is the proof that the leap is real." The architect refuses to go down the mountain. He stands on the icy peak, endures the thermodynamic nausea, and forces his biology to adapt to the new pressure. He knows that, in a matter of days, his bone marrow will produce more red blood cells, his engine will recalibrate, and Everest will become his new base camp. 3. The emergency brake, the tension of the vagus nerve. When the catchdog is barking and the altitude alarm is sounding, your body is under the command of the sympathetic nervous system. To retake control of the submarine, you cannot give verbal orders to the computer. You have to activate the manual hardware override switch. That switch is the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the master fiber optic cable of the parasympathetic nervous system. It descends from the skull, wraps your throat, and penetrates through your diaphragm. It is the channel by which the body informs the brain of its state of safety. When panic erupts, your breathing becomes automatic, short, high, and shallow. This breathing sends an acoustic and mechanical message to the amygdala. The predator is chasing us. Keep the cortisol valves wide open. To subdue the catchdog, you must apply thermodynamic strangulation. You must take conscious and tyrannical control of your diaphragmatic muscle. The architect of the now, in the middle of a night terror attack or before the most imposing meeting of his life, closes his mouth. He physically blocks thoracic breathing. He forces the air to descend to the base of the lungs, pushing the abdomen out with brute mechanical force. By forcing the diaphragm to descend, the dog's leash is pulled. The vagus nerve sends a massive electrical lash back to the brainstem. The message is an unnegotiable override order. The operator of this machine is breathing with the heavy, slow, and deep cadence of a lion resting in the sun. The threat is a software illusion. Turn off adrenaline. Inject acetylcholine. In less than 90 seconds of applying this mechanical pressure, a 4-second inhalation, a 2-second hold, and a heavy 6-second exhalation, the biology yields. The heart is forced to slow down. The chemical fire in your veins goes out. The frontal lobe turns back on. You have executed the terror short circuit. A somatic decoupling, the death of narrative. Dominating respiratory mechanics stops the physical fire, but if you do not eradicate the fuel, the amygdala will spark again in 5 minutes. The fuel for panic is not the external situation. The fuel is the narrative your mind projects onto the situation. Biological panic is simply a chemical discharge. That chemical substance, by itself, has no meaning. It is like pouring gasoline on the ground. The gasoline on the ground is not dangerous unless you bring a match close to it. The spark is the story your ego tells itself. When the slave feels the lash of adrenaline, his mind relates the horror movie, "I'm going to lose my house." By telling this story, the slave justifies the amygdala's reaction, pouring gasoline on the fire, creating an infinite feedback loop where fear feeds the mind and the mind feeds fear. The architect of the now operates with the psychopathy of a surgeon. He executes the maneuver of somatic decoupling. The architect stops the internal dialogue with the guillotine. He feels the knot in the stomach and the heart beating fast, but he absolutely forbids himself from giving it a meaning. He says, "I feel high thermal pressure in the digestive system." This is a simple discharge of neuropeptides. It is pure inorganic chemistry. By ripping the story of failure away from the physical sensation, you take away the amygdala's power of conviction. You are observing the storm from behind 10-centimeter thick bulletproof glass. You observe your own body trembling with the cold curiosity of a biologist studying an insect. The beast starves to death. 5. The arrogance of acoustic immovability. The last and deepest mistake the weak creator makes in the middle of a subconscious attack is the attempt to act, speak, or move frantically to escape the sensation. When terror attacks at night, the slave gets up, walks around, checks his phone, or calls a friend. These erratic movements are signals of submission. The catchdog sees you are moving out of fear and concludes there is a reason to flee. You are validating the panic order with your kinetic energy. Absolute domination of the cellular matrix requires the opposite demonstration. It requires the arrogance of immovability. Apex predators do not run aimlessly. The lion does not flee in circles. The lion freezes. He keeps his mass anchored to the ground and forces his environment to reveal its intentions. Total immobility is the thermodynamic signature of one who is not threatened by anything. When your subconscious tries to mutiny, you will flatten yourself against your seat. You will deactivate all kinetic motors in your body. You will not scratch your face. You will not move your legs. You will become a statue of massive lead. In that tomb-like silence, your central nervous system will enter cognitive dissonance. The amygdala is screaming emergency, but the muscles are sending absolute immobility. The physics of immobility generates a structural tension so massive that terror breaks against it. By refusing to offer an escape valve through nervous movement, the energy of fear is forced to collapse on itself, transmuting into power. You emerge not as the victim, but as the king who just tamed the monster. 6. Military protocols for the trench short circuit. The philosophy of fear is useless at 3 in the morning when your heart is about to explode. To subdue your biology in the dark, you need steel automatisms. You need override commands you can execute in the crossfire without thinking. Here are the 3 ballistic, non-negotiable protocols to crush the mutiny. Protocol 1. The choke chain, mechanical override. Panic breathes in the throat. Domination breathes in the gut. Action: execute forced vagal blockage. Execution: close lips firmly. Take control of the diaphragm. Inhale for 5s, pushing the stomach out. Hold that internal pressure for 5s. Strangle the dog. Exhale slowly through the nose for 10s, sinking the stomach to the spine. Repeat the cycle. Each long exhalation forces the cortisol valve to close. In 180 seconds, the biological revolution will have been crushed by pure physical force. Protocol 2. Zero-density anchoring, predator freeze. Fear demands erratic movement. Action. Activate total tactical freezing the millisecond you feel the claw of panic. Execution. Stop all movement. Prohibit rapid blinking. Relax the jaw. Deactivate shoulder muscles. Emulate the weight of a 3-ton block of steel. Demonstrate to your reptilian brain that you will not flee from the shadows. When the amygdala scans this immobility, it will conclude the threat is not real and deactivate the alarm. Protocol 3. Turbine rerouting, post-crisis immediate action. You cannot allow the underground engine to believe a panic attack is an effective way to stop your work. Action. Once you have subdued the panic, you must collect the thermodynamic tax of the released energy. Punishment through production. Execution. Your blood still has adrenaline. Stand up with the coldness of an industrial machine. Go to your command station. Select the most difficult architectural task of your project, the one that scared you most, and use the electrical residue of panic to hit the keyboard. Work for 30 minutes. Attack only speeds up your victory. Chapter 8. Deep Entanglement. The subconscious as antenna of the cosmos. Observe the largest psychological prison in which humanity has been locked. The inertial slave, educated under the myopia of classical physics and materialistic biology, believes that he ends where his skin ends. He believes that his mind is an isolated phenomenon, a small electrical flash enclosed within a vault of bone. Under this hallucination of local separation, the slave looks at his objectives, the $1 million, the elite investor, and perceives them as distant objects located out there. Believing there is a real distance between him and his empire, the slave deduces that the only way to unite both points is through thermodynamic attrition. It is the mentality of a beast of burden pulling a cart. It is a clumsy, slow, and pathetically inefficient effort. The architect of the now operates in a dimension where distance is an optical illusion. The architect understands that his subconscious mind is not a file of memories locked in his head. It is the antenna of the cosmos. His subconscious mind is the most sophisticated wave transmission and reception mechanism in the known universe. It is a satellite dish of flesh and electromagnetism, submerged in the vast ocean of the unified field. In this chapter, we are going to destroy the illusion of space and distance using the depths of wave physics. You will learn that you do not need to move your carbon vehicle across the city to attract wealth. You only need to alter the vibration of your internal machinery. You will discover the terrifying power of sympathetic resonance and how your subconscious, once tuned to quantum lead, acts as a cosmic tuning fork that drags reality to you. 1. The mirage of separation, anatomy of the unified field. To understand how your subconscious communicates with the external market, you must first understand the structure of the space that surrounds you. At the beginning of the 20th century, quantum physicists discovered a phenomenon so disturbing that Albert Einstein tried to refute it until his death: quantum entanglement. Scientists demonstrated that if you take two subatomic particles that have been joined and separate them by thousands of kilometers, any alteration you cause to particle A occurs instantaneously with zero latency in particle B. Modern physics concluded the unthinkable. At a fundamental level, separation does not exist. The universe is not an empty container filled with isolated objects. The universe is a single, continuous, indivisible, and vibrant fabric. It is the unified field. You, in your carbon body, are not an object thrown into that field. You are a local condensation of that same field. You are the ocean expressing itself as a wave. Your conscious mind was evolutionarily designed to perceive separation so that you could distinguish between your hand and the fire. It is a local survival tool, but your subconscious mind, that ancient and massive motor, does not recognize that border. The subconscious is connected directly to the total network of the cosmos. When you understand that the subconscious is the antenna of the cosmos, you realize that the millionaire client is not far away. They occupy the same quantum coordinate as you. The only reason they haven't collapsed into your reality is that the frequency you are emitting through your antenna does not match the frequency of wealth. 2. Sympathetic resonance. Physics of the biological tuning fork. Let us observe this phenomenon through an undeniable principle of sound science. Sympathetic resonance. Imagine a closed room. In the center, there is a steel tuning fork designed to vibrate at 440 Hz. At the other side of the immense room, 10 meters away, there is a grand piano. All the piano strings are in silence. You strike the tuning fork with brutal force. The steel begins to oscillate. There is no physical cable connecting it to the piano, but the tuning fork hits the air molecules, creating invisible pressure waves. When those acoustic waves hit the piano, the strings tuned to other notes do not react. They are indifferent to the wave. But the piano string tuned exactly to the note A, 440 Hz, begins to vibrate on its own. It begins to emit a powerful, heavy, and harmonic sound without anyone having physically touched it. It has been dragged into action by the gravitational force of sympathetic resonance. The transmitter and receiver have become entangled. Your subconscious mind is the steel tuning fork. What you keep housed in the depths of your autonomous machinery is the note that the tuning fork emits incessantly, 24 hours a day. The inertial slave strikes his fork with the hammer of anxiety and fear of poverty. His biological antenna emits a chaotic 200 Hz wave. That wave leaves his body and hits all the opportunities in the matrix. Elite clients and majestic alliances, vibrating at 600 Hz, feel that wave of scarcity and remain motionless. They pass by. Who vibrates in response? The strings that share that low frequency. The slave attracts toxic clients, scammers, and misery. The architect of the now descends to his anechoic chamber and strikes his tuning fork with the unmovable density of quantum lead. He emits the frequency of absolute authority and icy abundance. That expansive, heavy wave leaves his command center. When that massive wave hits an elite investor, the resonance is immediate. The external matrix begins to vibrate in response. They call you. They offer the contract. Everything occurs as if synchronized by a divine choreography. But there is no mystical divinity here. There is raw obedience to thermodynamics and fluid acoustics. You have dominated the room without moving from your chair. 3. The gravity transmitter, the magnetic oscillation of the heart. The physical mechanism through which your subconscious interacts with the unified field is the electromagnetism of the heart. Neurocardiology has mapped this with forensic precision. The magnetic field of your heart is several thousand times more powerful and expansive than the field generated by your brain. It is a field in the shape of a toroid that expands outward and involves your entire carbon body in a radius of several meters. When your subconscious machinery has been purged of thermal leaks and subjected to the certainty of the empire, the heart receives an order of global coherence. Coherence is the optimal state of wave physics. It is the difference between the diffuse light of an old incandescent bulb and the lethal, concentrated beam of an industrial laser. When you operate from the frequency of the solitary king, your heart emits this laser of massive attraction. You are transmitting a quantum data packet. Any individual who enters your radius of action is crossing your magnetic field. If your field is emitting coherence, the nervous systems of the mortals around you suffer a biological impact. Their own amygdalae relax. Their subconscious reads your telemetry and detects the signature of a leader, an unmovable pillar. This is the hidden mechanics of why people instinctively trust you or submit to your commercial conditions without haggling. You did not convince them with conscious intelligence or cheap manipulative strategies. You subdued them through the atmospheric pressure of your cardiac oscillation. They fell into your orbit. 4. Hijacking massive nodes, remote tactical entanglement. Inertial society believes in networking. They teach you to go to events and hand out business cards, hoping a massive node, an elite mentor or investor, gives you a minute of attention. This is grotesquely inefficient. By pursuing a high-voltage node from a place of need, you are emitting a wave of lack. The massive node detects that beggar vibration and blocks access. The architect of the now understands that in the unified field, there is no space. Therefore, there is no need to cross geographical distances. He uses tactical entanglement. Before any approach in the 3D world, the architect enters his anechoic chamber. He descends to theta waves, and there, in the darkness of his underground motor, he tunes the antenna. If the architect seeks an alliance, he does not think of the person as a target to deceive. He thinks of them as a frequency to match. He adjusts his own internal tuning fork. He matches the phase of the wave. In quantum physics, when two systems vibrate in perfect harmony, they become entangled. In that state of resonance, the architect writes the email or designs the proposal. When the giant receives the 3D message, he does not read it as a beggar's mail. He feels an impact in his own field. He feels an instinctive familiarity. His subconscious informs him, this transmitter is not a threat. This transmitter speaks our native language of matter. The pact is forged in the invisible ether before physical hands shake. You have hijacked the attention of the giant not by persuasion, but by wave synchronization. 5. The acoustic friction shield, subconscious invisibility. Mastering your biological antenna also confers the most sought-after military ability of the Matrix, invisibility before chaos. In radio technology, frequency filtering allows a high-frequency transmitter to be deaf to low-frequency static or enemy interference. They are acoustic realities that do not touch. When your autonomous machinery has been coded to resonate constantly at 600 Hz, your carbon body begins to generate an acoustic friction shield. If a toxic individual or a competitor operating in the mud of 200 Hz tries to clash with your empire, a phase discordance phenomenon occurs. The inertial slave reacts to problems because he resonates with them. He is hurt by the insult of a failure because his subconscious fears being a failure. There is sympathetic resonance. The forged titan does not experience resonance with smallness. The antenna registers the noise as low-density white noise and discards it. By offering no emotional resistance, the problem passes through you, like light through glass. You become literally unreachable for human misery. Conflictive people distance themselves because the atmospheric pressure of your cardiac coherence is suffocating to them. You drown them with your density. 6. Military protocols for cosmic emission. Having $1 million radio antenna is useless if you don't know how to operate the dials. To use the subconscious as the catapult of your reality, you must subject it to daily tactical calibrations. Here are the 3 ballistic protocols to drag the cosmos toward your center of gravity. Protocol 1. The strike of the tuning fork, dawn tuning. You cannot let the antenna wake up transmitting residual worry. Action. Force the heart's toroidal wave calibration in the first minutes of wakefulness. Execution. Upon waking, with eyes closed, deep alpha, isolate in silence. Strike the mental tuning fork. Visualize your maximum objective and mechanically inject the chemical density of certainty into your chest. Feel the physical weight of victory. Breathe slowly and force your heart to maintain that heavy sensation for 3 minutes. You are establishing the transmission frequency for the next 16 hours. Protocol 2. Entanglement radar, target synchronization. Never start a critical negotiation from emotional isolation. Action. Pre-align your wave phase with the 3D node you wish to conquer. Execution. 10 minutes before the meeting, paralyze your vehicle. Turn off the ego's voice that asks for approval. Send a subconscious pulse toward the target's ecosystem. Identify the pain or hunger of that market. Physically assume the posture of being the absolute medicine for that pain. Inundate yourself with the security that your presence is the rescue they have been asking for. The deal is done at a fluid level before hello. Protocol 3. Frequency quarantine. Immediate cut of destructive resonance. Your antenna will pick up trash in high-entropy environments. Action. Activate the signal blocker the millisecond you detect an inertial vibration. Execution. If you are with people radiating lack, physically change your body weight. Raise your sternum and declare in your frontal lobe, unauthorized frequency, cutting system absorption. Assume glacial coldness. Look at the carrier of that static as if they were miles away. By withdrawing emotional attention, you shield your core, preventing external misery from vibrating your strings. Chapter 9. structural tension, and quantum lead. Frenetic euphoria and hope are frequencies of extremely high friction. They are the equivalent of revving an engine in neutral until the valves melt. Worse still, desperate desire emits a magnetic signature of a vacuum. If you desire something with desperation, your heart is sending an undeniable telegram to the unified field. I don't have it. I am empty. I am a beggar waiting for a miracle. And the matrix, which is a perfect gravitational mirror, returns to you exactly the same scarcity that you are radiating. The architect of the now despises hope. The architect does not desire the empire because desire is the metric of those who do not possess. The solitary king operates from a diametrically opposite emotional dimension, a sensation so heavy, so cold, and so relentless that it crushes doubt before it is born. Quantum lead. In this chapter, we are going to destroy the hysteria of motivation. We will dive into the civil engineering of your nervous system. You will learn to abandon the exhausting muscular effort of your conscious mind and replace it with structural tension. You will discover how to forge in your gut the glacial sensation of absolute inevitability and how to endure the slowness of physical matter without your frequency altering a single hertz. It is time to weigh like lead. 1. The physics of desire, thermodynamic vacuum and false euphoria. To purge your underground engine of the poison of hope, you must first understand how pressure works in fluid physics. Imagine a sealed steel tank. If you extract all the air from its interior using a pump, you create a vacuum, negative pressure. The tank is empty. Nature abhors a vacuum, so atmospheric pressure will try to crush it. If the steel is not thick enough, the tank will implode and collapse on itself. Human desire is exactly this, a thermodynamic vacuum. When you stand before the 3D world and feel a burning, painful, and desperate desire for $1 million, you are generating negative pressure inside. You are screaming that you are empty. The slave believes that this strong desire will act as a magnet to attract money. But the magnetic reality is that the pressure of the outside world, bills, competition, friction, detects that internal vacuum, pushes against the walls of your psyche, and ends up crushing your security. You implode under the stress of not having. False euphoria is another trap of this same vacuum. Fake gurus tell you that you must feel overflowing joy, that you must celebrate as if you had won the lottery. But analyze your biology when you fake that euphoria. Your heart rate spikes. Your breathing is thoracic. Your sympathetic nervous system turns on. You are in acute stress. You are spending a colossal amount of fuel, ATP, to maintain that lie. And your underground engine, your subconscious, which scans your vital signs, knows perfectly well that the joy is forced. It detects the effort, concludes it is an inertial simulation, and aborts the mission. The universe does not obey noise. Dense matter does not reorganize because you jump and shout. Matter reorganizes by obeying gravity, and gravity is dictated solely and exclusively by mass and weight. If you want to attract a colossal empire, you must stop emitting the high-pitched shriek of desire and start emitting the unmovable weight of tactical possession. 2. Structural tension versus muscular effort, bridge engineering. To anchor the weight of the empire in your biology, we will use civil engineering, specifically the mechanics of suspension bridges. Imagine a colossal bridge like the Golden Gate. It holds millions of tons of asphalt, steel, and thousands of vehicles crossing under hurricane winds. How does it support that weight? It does not do so through an engine that constantly pushes upward. It does not do so by applying active, brute force. The bridge is sustained through structural tension. The main cables are anchored deeply into concrete blocks buried in bedrock. The bridge deck simply hangs from these cables. Tension is distributed mechanically. The bridge does not spend energy, does not sweat, does not struggle, and does not exhaust itself. It could hold that weight for 300 years in complete silence and thermal apathy. Now compare this with the Olympic weightlifter. If you ask a man to hold 200 kilograms over his head with pure muscular effort, he will collapse. The inertial slave tries to build his empire using psychological muscular effort. He uses his frontal lobe, conscious willpower, to try to believe in his goal every day. I have to believe, he says while clenching his teeth and feeling anxiety in his neck. He is holding the $1 million over his head with the arms of his mind. Since willpower is a biological battery that runs out quickly, by the weekend, the creator collapses and abandons the project. The weight crushed him. The architect of the now builds a quantum suspension bridge. He does not lift the weight with conscious muscles. He descends to the bedrock, subconscious in theta, and sinks bolts. He drives the order into the deepest part of his basal ganglia. Once the cable is anchored in the rock of the autonomous machinery, the architect lets go of the weight. He stops making conscious effort. He no longer has to try to believe in his empire. He simply rests on the structural tension of the cable. Certeza holds him. 3. The alloy of quantum lead, the boring and glacial certainty. What is the exact emotional signature of this structural tension? What does the architect feel when he has anchored the cable in the bedrock? He does not feel butterflies in his stomach. He does not feel euphoria. He feels the boring majesty of quantum lead. Lead is heavy, dense, and has an extremely high melting point. It does not react easily with other chemicals. Its density is so amazing that it is used to shield nuclear reactors. Lead does not shine. It is not pretty, but it is thermodynamically unstoppable. When you install the order of extreme wealth in your underground engine, the emotional state of acceptance is cold possession. Imagine you make an online purchase of a hyper-luxury watch. You put in your card, the payment is processed, and the system confirms purchase successful, package in transit, delivery guaranteed tomorrow morning. What do you feel in the following 24 hours? Are you hyperventilating? Are you praying and jumping? Of course not. You feel a monotonous certainty. You know the watch is already yours. It is a legal and physical fact. The logistics of a truck crossing the city to put the box at your door is simply 3D bureaucracy. You relax. Your heart beats slowly. You think about something else. That relaxation is quantum lead. When the architect collapses the order to dominate his market, he floods his ribcage with that same level of bureaucratic certainty. The underground engine takes command. If someone asks if he will succeed, the architect responds with a hollow, glacial, and bored look, as if asked if the sky is blue. By emitting this frequency of lead, the heart generates a magnetic field of extreme density. Scarcity, the radiation of the envious or market doubts, crashes against your lead-shielded chest and disintegrates without penetrating your core. You have blocked the radiation of failure by assuming the weight of inevitability. 4. The inertia of matter, enduring the rendering lag. Here is where the true thermodynamic battle is fought, and where 99% of aspiring kings die on the shore. You have injected the code. Your underground engine has accepted the order. Your chest is charged with quantum lead, but you open your eyes, look at the 3D matrix, and your bank account is still empty. The inertial slave, trapped in the optical illusion of the immediate, panics. He says, "My structural tension didn't work. Metaphysics has failed. Nothing has changed." In saying this and feeling fear, the slave rips the cable from the bedrock. He cuts the structural tension, and his bridge collapses into the abyss. The architect of the now understands the laws of inertial physics and knows the concept of rendering lag or the thermal inertia of massive materials. Observe a supertanker carrying 500,000 tons of crude oil. The captain in the tower turns the helm to port. The mechanical order is sent. The command is perfect. Does the ship turn immediately? Not at all. Due to the gigantic mass of steel and the kinetic momentum, the ship will continue moving straight for a full kilometer, dragging tons of water, before the bow begins, slowly and agonizingly, to deviate to the new course. There is a massive temporal lag between cause and effect. If the captain were a 200 Hertz slave, he would panic 20 seconds after turning the helm. He would look out the window, see the ship still straight, and turn it back the other way, condemning the maneuver forever. Your current life is a ship of 500,000 tons. Lack of clients and bad habits have physical mass. When you install the code of quantum lead in your underground engine, you have just turned the helm. The command has been registered by the unified field, but physical matter is dense, heavy, and stupid. Contracts must be drafted. Competitors must make mistakes to leave you space. Atomic matrix needs time for friction. The architect looks at his empty bank account the next day and does not feel the slightest sting of doubt. He knows the poverty he sees is just the inertial wake of the ship still dragging from the previous course. He knows the helm is already locked. He leans back and allows thermodynamics to do its tedious work. 5. The torsion anchor, surrendering the logistics of how. To keep this leaden tension intact during the lag of matter, you must execute a psychological maneuver of amputation. You must murder your obsession with the how. The frontal lobe is an arrogant but limited microprocessor. When you set a colossal goal, the conscious mind immediately tries to design a logistical map. If I need the $1 million, then client A has to sign on Tuesday, then I must hire person B. You have just dictated to the unified field, which has trillions of variables at its disposal, the exact and millimetric path by which it must deliver wealth to you. By imposing your pathetic linear map, you generate resistance. What if client A says no? Your frontal lobe will panic. The plan failed, we are lost. You will destroy the quantum lead, and the catchdog, amygdala, will take control. The subconscious and the unified field do not operate with linear maps from A to B. They operate using routes of least thermal resistance. If you drop water from a mountaintop, the water does not draw a blueprint to decide how it will reach the valley. The water simply flows. Its only order is descend. If it finds a huge rock, it does not crash or get frustrated. It bypasses it in milliseconds and keeps falling, taking the fastest and most efficient channel. The solitary king operates with mechanical surrender. This is not the surrender of the weak who abandon dreams. It is the tactical surrender of the commander delegating operational functions. The architect dictates the what. The empire is consolidated. The weight in the chest is quantum lead. And immediately, with dictatorial coldness, he flatly refuses to think about the how. He tears from his head the responsibility of organizing the atoms of the market. He hands the heavy logistical work to the underground motor. He knows the autonomous machinery will find the route of least resistance. Sometimes that route will involve you losing your job, so you are forced to launch the master product you kept hidden. Sometimes it will be a server error. If you try to control the friction, you will stop the current. Abandon logistics. Anchor the cable in the what. Put the handbrake on the frontal lobe and let water pierce. 6. Military protocols for the lead anchor. The theory of structural tension vanishes under enemy fire if you do not have physical anchoring protocols. When external reality hits you in the face showing scarcity, your reptilian brain will try to let go of the cable. You must bolt it down. Here are the 3 ballistic mandates to install the density of quantum lead. Protocol 1. The suffocation of hope. Language hygiene. Hope is a thermal leak that destabilizes bridge tension. Action. Execute the grammatical purge of lack. Execution. From this second, the words I wish, I hope, with luck, and I'm going to try are eradicated. You will never use them again. If you are going to launch a project, your language must be of ballistic confirmation. You say, the system is deployed. The result will operate according to the designed architecture. We proceed. By forcing your frontal lobe to speak in terms of mechanical execution, you rip power from doubt. Metal confirmation. Protocol 2. The gravitational rehearsal. Thoracic anchoring of inevitability. Action. Somatic simulator of absolute possession. Execution. Every morning, isolate in silence. Visualize the final impact. The signed contract, the money in the server. Now, instead of smiling like an overexcited mammal, force your muscles. Exhale deeply. Let the shoulders drop with brutal weight. Feel a lead ball of 100 kilograms settling in your chest. Feel your breathing become slow, rhythmic, and almost lazy. Soak in the feeling that the storm already passed and you won the war 5 years ago. Maintain this while you open your eyes and type. Protocol 3. Tactical blindness to lag. Shielding against the dashboard. If you look at 3D metrics when the ship is barely turning, you will panic and cancel the subconscious maneuver. Action. Dictatorial blockage of early result audits. Execution. When you collapse a high-voltage order, you decree tactical blindness. During the first 21 to 30 days, you strictly forbid yourself from checking your bank account to see if it worked yet, or checking likes and statistics. You isolate yourself from immediate feedback. Assume the master server is processing the request and that auditing will only introduce friction. Just push coal. Chapter 10. The Automatic Empire, the Sovereignty of the Sleeping King. If your empire requires you to be constantly pushing the gears with your own hands so that it does not stop, then you have not built an empire. You have built an iron prison with your name on the door. You are the slave of your own creation. The architect of the now, the reality engineer who operates under the relentless laws of thermodynamics and pragmatic metaphysics, does not build to work hard for the rest of his days. The architect descends to the combustion chamber and endures the initial fire with a single sadistic goal: to make conscious effort biologically obsolete. In this final chapter of your structural forge, we are going to witness the miracle of inertial collapse. We will study the transition from the brutal friction of beginnings to the perpetual motion of autonomous machinery. You will learn to annihilate your dependence on willpower and turn your nervous system into a predator. You will learn to assume the tactical majesty of the sleeping king, the state of absolute sovereignty where you govern matter from stillness, while the immensity of your underground motor drags the matrix toward your throne without you having to shed a single drop of sweat. 1. The flywheel, the transition from friction to kinetic momentum. To understand the state of automatic domination, we must observe one of the simplest and most devastating mechanical pieces invented by human engineering: the flywheel. A flywheel is a metallic disc of colossal mass and weight, specifically designed to store kinetic energy. When the engine is off, the wheel is at absolute rest. Imagine you have to spin a 5-ton flywheel using only the strength of your arms. At first, static friction is titanic. You push with all your musculature, your veins throb, your heart pumps at 150 beats per minute, and the disc barely moves a millimeter. This is the equivalent of the effort of the first months of your reprogramming. Isolating yourself from scarcity, imposing ballistic repetition, enduring the environment's rejection, and forcing your basal ganglia to wire new pathways in your flesh. It hurts, it exhausts. But the architect does not give up. He keeps pushing. The disc makes its first full turn. Then a second. Resistance decreases mathematically. Suddenly, the disc reaches 1,000 revolutions per minute. And here, the laws of physics invert in your favor. The immense mass of the steel disc, which was previously your greatest enemy, becomes your main engine. The flywheel spins with such gigantic kinetic momentum that if you stop pushing right now, the disc will keep spinning. Moreover, if you tried to stop it by throwing rocks at it, external crises, criticism, bureaucratic problems, the 5-ton disc would pulverize the rocks into dust, without reducing its speed by a single hertz. Your subconscious mind is this biological flywheel. The inertial slave never manages to make his flywheel reach cruising speed because he pushes one day, rests two, gets scared, pushes the other way, and dissipates all kinetic energy. You have been applying ballistic force in a single direction. You have endured pressure in isolation. And now the underground motor has reached critical mass. Your quantum lead beliefs, your hyperfrontal execution habits, and your cardiac magnetism of icy abundance are spinning at 10,000 revolutions per minute in the darkness of your nervous system. Conscious effort is no longer necessary. The subconscious flywheel has stored so much thermal and kinetic energy that it now drags you. If you tried to be lazy, it would cost you an unnatural biological effort because you would have to break 5 tons of winning inertia. You have crossed the threshold. Success has stopped being a goal to pursue and has become a law of inertia that you cannot stop. To the predatory automaton, the nervous system as hunter. We must transfer this steel mechanics to the cellular biology of your carbon vehicle. How does the automatic empire look and feel in your blood, in your nerves, and in your daily life? Observe your autonomic nervous system. At this precise moment, you are not using your conscious mind to order your heart to beat. You do not calculate gastric juices or cell division. All of this occurs automatically. Biology delegates survival to deep gears, so your consciousness remains free. When you have forged the Titan's consciousness, the generation of wealth and influence, moves from the sphere of conscious effort to the autonomous system. The underground engine becomes a predatory automaton. You no longer have to wake up and ask yourself, what should I do today to earn money? Where will I get the ideas? Your reticular activating system, the biological filter at the base of your brain, has been irrevocably programmed with the coordinates of massive domination. While you sleep, while you walk without thinking of anything, this biological radar is scanning the unified field and the 3D matrix 40 million times per second. You are relaxed, but the beast is hunting. Suddenly, a cold, heavy, and exact intuition pierces your spinal cord. Write this email to this specific person now. Move this capital toward this asset. Build this code system this afternoon. There is no friction in the idea. There is no doubt. The order does not come from the nervous intellect. It comes from the abyss of predatory instinct. You sit at the command station and hands move alone on the keyboard. Deep work no longer requires the military discipline of the first months. Execution flows like water descending a cliff. It is violent, massive, but completely lacks effort because it is simply obeying the law of gravity. You are witnessing the lethal efficiency of a biological machine that has aligned 100% of its voltage. 3. The death of willpower, the fuel of the weak. It is imperative that you bury the concept of willpower today. Civilization taught you to idolize men who use pure willpower to overcome obstacles. But from systems thermodynamics, having to use willpower is the pathological symptom of an engine that is out of synchronization. Willpower is the friction produced when your frontal lobe, 5% of your conscious mass, wants to go north, but your subconscious machinery, 95% of your autonomous mass, wants to go south. It is the grinding of gears turning in the opposite direction. Using willpower is like driving a vehicle with the handbrake on at maximum speed. The engine will end up melted, and the journey will be a hell of wear and tear. The architect of the now, when he reaches the sovereignty of the automatic empire, no longer possesses willpower. He has annihilated it because he no longer needs it. When you have extirpated fear and installed quantum lead, gears are perfectly lubricated. In this state, forging your masterpiece for 12 hours is not a sacrifice that requires will. It is a biological urgency. It is a devouring appetite. If someone chained you to a bed to prevent you from working, you would enter withdrawal, because your body now extracts high-density dopamine exclusively from conquering matter. The 200-hertz slave will look at you from the outside. He will see the colossal volume of asymmetric value you produce and the relentless coldness with which you operate, and he will say, "You have superhuman discipline." You will look at him with icy apathy and will not explain the truth, that there is no sacrifice. There is no forced discipline. You are simply letting yourself be dragged by the astronomical inertia of a black hole that you yourself cultivated in your chest. Effort is dead. Only gravity remains. The sailing battleship, the tactical surrender of the intellect. To illustrate the mechanics of this final phase, imagine an 18th century warship, a massive vessel equipped with dozens of gigantic heavy canvas sails navigating in the middle of the ocean. During the construction phase, you were the rower in a small boat. Your frontal lobe grabbed the oars and hit the water with desperation. Every meter you advanced cost blood and lactic acid. If you stopped rowing to sleep, the inertial current pushed you back. It was the agony of resistance. But you used that boat to sail toward deep waters. And there, in the boilers of your solitude, you built the battleship. You tuned the acoustics of your voice. You forged the sigil of your vision. You cauterized the thermal leaks of your traumas. You armored the hull with titanium. And above all, you hoisted the immense sails of your subconscious, an electromagnetic network designed to catch the inexhaustible force of the unified field. Now the battleship is finished, and here the tactical surrender occurs. The wind of the unified field, the organizing force of the matrix, the asymmetric synchronies, the market capital flow, begins to blow against the sails of your new vibration. The wind fills the canvas. The 1,000-ton vessel creaks, breaks the static friction of the water, and advances. What should the captain, your frontal lobe, do at this point? The novice captain, addicted to stress, does not know how to deal with ease. He goes to the deck and starts pushing the mast with bare hands, trying to make the ship go faster. He wastes energy trying to micromanage a process that is infinitely larger than his arms. The solitary king lets go of the manual rudder. The architect understands that when the wind of the cosmos has inflated the sails of his underground motor, the greatest thermodynamic stupidity is to interfere with the frontal lobe. The architect retires to his chambers. He sits on his throne. He surrenders to the system's inertia. The ship advances at a terrifying speed, cutting the waves of mediocrity like a hot blade through ice. Million-dollar contracts close. Elite alliances knock on the door. Technical problems are solved almost by accident. The matrix works for you. You just observe, approve movements, and gently correct the course. This is the empire. 5. The sovereignty of the sleeping king, governing from the void. We have reached the pinnacle of pragmatic metaphysics, the state of the sleeping king. This concept does not imply that you go to bed to sleep while the world falls apart. The sleep of the king is a metaphor for the arrogance of conscious stillness in the face of the third dimension's hysteria. The sleeping king is he who has delegated absolute command of his troops, his biology, magnetism, and intuitive intelligence to his most lethal generals, his basal ganglia and vagus nerve. In the day-to-day of this sovereignty, your heart rate is slow and monotonous. You have developed a psychopathic tolerance to uncertainty. When the outside market panics, when stocks fall or competitors attack, the slave expects you, the leader, to panic with them. They expect you to run, to scream, to sweat, but you do not flinch. You sit on your gravitational throne, observe the 3D storm, and do not emit a single volt of thermal reaction. This leaden apathy is the greatest demonstration of power in the physical universe. Your silence and immobility send a devastating signal to the matrix. This storm does not have enough mass to alter my planet's rotation. Do not wake me for trifles. By governing from the void, you allow the machinery to process the solution. You let the subconscious evaluate millions of variables, and at the exact moment the perfect order rises to your frontal lobe, you execute a precise 5-minute move, a cold call, a code adjustment, and you annihilate the threat completely. The automatic empire grants you the supreme luxury, absolute control of time. You are no longer a battery that wears out. You are the generator that feeds the grid. You have gone from being the soot-covered builder who strikes the anvil in the dark to being the untouchable monarch who observes from above how his perfect machinery transforms air into gold. 6. Military protocols for organic delegation. Reaching the automatic empire phase requires you to learn to let go of manual controls without panicking. You have to teach your conscious ego to step aside so that the steel giant can do its work. Here are the final 3 executive mandates to establish the sovereignty of the sleeping king in your daily life. Protocol 1. The foreman's retirement. Logistical micromanagement fast. Your conscious mind will try to sabotage the subconscious fluidity by demanding to understand how the money or the solution will arrive. Action. Establish immediate censorship of the obsessive planning of the how. Execution. You have defined the massive goal. You have felt the quantum lead. Now, your intellect will try to build a bridge of 100 millimetric steps. Apply the guillotine. Dismiss your intellect from logistical labor. When logical anxiety attacks, decree aloud, the machinery has absolute jurisdiction over the roots. Limit yourself to taking the next obvious step in front of you in this millisecond, and blindly trust that the subconscious will deploy the stairs just before your foot touches the void. Protocol 2. The forge in the void. Hypnagogic incubation of conflicts. Never try to solve a massive engineering problem or a financial conflict from the stress of beta waves. You are using the wrong tool. Action. Delegate insoluble problems to the engine room during the biological blackout, sleep. Execution. When you hit a 3D wall that your intellect cannot pierce, do not stay awake burning ATP. Stop the machine. 15 minutes before sleep, drop to alpha frequency. Visualize the problem and physically transfer it to the darkness of your subconscious. Command. Entering encrypted data package. I demand the solution. Turn off the screen and fall asleep with the heavy certainty that 50 trillion cells are computing the algorithm while you rest. Upon waking, the master code of the solution will be floating in your mind, assembled and free of friction. Protocol 3. The assimilation of gravity. Surrender to acceleration. When the floodgates open and wealth, power, and alliances begin to arrive at a terrifying speed, your ancient biology will feel the altitude vertigo. Action. Annul the self-sabotage mechanism in the face of escape velocity. Execution. When the automatic empire starts delivering asymmetric results, your ego will feel that this is too easy and will seek a problem to justify effort. Annul that trap instantly. Anchor your feet. Breathe slow. Say, friction is dead. This mass is my new basal state. Become the inertia of your battleship. Conclusion. The tamed beast. You have reached the end of the assembly. The biological war of attrition that you waged for decades against yourself has been officially closed. The inertial slave who opened this manual, who lived terrified by his own self-sabotages and believed he was a victim of defective genetics, has been completely dismantled. You are no longer a fragile, sweaty passenger trapped in a vehicle out of control. Now you understand that the dark entity in the basement of your skull was not a mystical demon trying to destroy you, but a colossal beast of burden, blindly waiting for a worthy master to place the steel reins upon it. The subconscious mind is the most lethal thermodynamic miracle in the known universe. With its 40 million bits per second, its absolute control over the cellular alchemy of your blood, and its direct magnetic connection to the unified field, it possesses a crushing gravity. For years, you let this 10,000 horsepower beast be programmed by the whispers of terror and scarcity from the 200 Hertz society. The beast dragged you toward failure and fatigue, not out of malice, but out of pure inertial obedience, because you had abandoned the helm. But today you have executed the coup d'etat. You have descended to the engine room with the scalpel of epigenetics, the torque wrench of frequency descent, and the pneumatic hammer of ballistic repetition. You have purged inherited emotional parasites. You have silenced the static of beta waves and learned to give orders to your basal ganglia in their native language. Acoustic resonance, the density of quantum lead, and the non-negotiable biomechanical posture of domination. You have taken the catch dog and turned it into your personal shock infantry. The beast is tamed. What awaits you now on the other side of this reprogramming defies the understanding of mortals. You enter the territory of zero friction. When 95% of your neurological mass aligns geometrically with the hyperfrontal ambition of your intellect, linear effort disappears. You no longer push the rock uphill. Your autonomous machinery becomes a silent hunter that detects wealth, systems, and power, dragging matter toward your spatial coordinate while you rest in the arrogance of stillness. The 3D universe has no choice but to bow before an organism that operates with such electromagnetic coherence. Close this book. Turn off the outside noise. There are no longer biological excuses nor insurmountable traumas that can stop you. The underground motor is yours. Claim the throne of your carbon vehicle, pressurize the cabin, and let the immensity of your own beast drag you toward the absolute collapse of your empire. You are the architect of the now. The Matrix awaits your command.